Hello there, good morning. Welcome to breakfast with me, John Kay, in Westminster today, where the Queen's body lies in state for a fourth and final day, and Nina Warhurst is in the studio in Salford. Here are our headlines this morning. The US President Joe Biden has arrived in the UK ahead of the Queen's funeral. He will be meeting King Charles along with other world leaders at Buckingham Palace a little later. It's been announced that big screens in towns and cities across the UK will show tomorrow's funeral, along with 125 cinemas. Meanwhile, thousands of people continue to queue to pay their respects. The Queen's body will lie in state for another 24 hours.
Away from Westminster, today's other headlines. A man's been charged with attempted murder after two police officers were stabbed in London's Leicester Square.
Hello there, good morning. It's Sunday the 18th of September. You're watching BBC Breakfast from Westminster today. And the US President Joe Biden has arrived in the UK ahead of the Queen's funeral tomorrow morning. And this is as today marks the last full day of the Queen's lying in state here, with people warned that the waiting time is now at least 14 hours. This is the queue not far from where we are at the Palace of Westminster, the final stage before people enter Westminster Hall. You can see it's moving pretty quickly at the moment. It seems like the authorities are keen to get people through as quickly as they can right now, so that they can get through the huge numbers which still remain and which are likely to build as Sunday goes on. Well, meanwhile, this morning, the Queen Consort Camilla has recorded a televised tribute to the Queen, praising her for carving her own role in a male-dominated world, as Duncan Kennedy reports.
Two countries united by one grief. President Biden landing last night at Stansted with the First Lady ahead of tomorrow's funeral. He's one of around 500 heads of state and dignitaries taking part. From presidents who cross oceans to people who line rivers, Mr. Biden arrives in a capital whose centre has been transformed.
Keep on going, guys, keep on going.
At its heart, a queue whose length is measured in hours, not yards. Some even have proof.
I've been here for 8 hours and 14 seconds, 14 minutes. That's how long I've been here for.
At times, the queue has been 10 miles long. For some, the walking brings weariness and a need to loosen the limbs. Not far behind them, someone honoured by the Queen, who knows all about pace and perseverance.
In my head, it was like, I have to join this queue, so I stopped all my plans for the weekend, got on the train this morning, met some friends to change my clothes, and here I am.
The queue's tempo has varied, but has consistently remained patient and determined. To many here, the Queen is not a, but the national treasure.
She's given us so much. She's given us her whole life. And I just rang Mum and I said, I think we just need to go.
What does she mean to you, the Queen?
I think quite a lot, because obviously we've all grown up with her being obviously our Queen, and she's had such an impact on all our lives. I think she means quite a lot to all of us.
I was a guardsman myself, working outside Buckingham Palace and the Tower in Windsor Castle. I feel quite a close affinity with the royal family. Especially the Queen. I've met her on occasions, and I just think it's my duty to come down and show my respects.
When this queue does finally close and the last person files past the Queen's coffin sometime early tomorrow morning, it'll mark the end of an unprecedented act of collective tribute. Attention will then move from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for the funeral. Last night, inside Westminster Hall, standing sentinel to their beloved grandmother, the Queen's 8 grandchildren, posted to all sides of the plinth. A symmetrical display of her extended family's devotion. Flowing around them, those who've come to pay respects to a long royal life, bookended by coronation and commemoration. Westminster Hall carrying the solemnity of a cathedral amid the silence of a library.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
At Buckingham Palace, King Charles has been meeting some of the Commonwealth leaders who've arrived for the funeral. They included the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He's previously declared himself a Republican, but said such matters were for another time. At Windsor Castle, they've been moving tens of thousands of flowers from well-wishers inside the castle grounds, ready for the burial ceremony, with the blooms all facing towards Her Majesty's beloved home. Tonight at 8 p.m, the country will hold a national moment of reflection for 1 minute to stop and think about the life and legacy of the Queen. It comes ahead of tomorrow's funeral, a momentous occasion of state, a family farewell, and a full stop moment in this nation's history. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Well, this is the scene above the Palace of Westminster this morning, the Union flag at half-mast there on St Stephen's Tower. There's a stillness in the air, there's a silence in the air as well. Remember the people we're seeing in the queue as they approach Westminster Hall right now have been here for 12, 14 hours. They've queued over the night while you and I have been asleep. They have just been walking slowly from the other side of the bridge, the other side of the River Thames, as they approach here, making friends, chatting, but thinking very much about what they're doing and why they're here. Now, the Queen Consort, Camilla, has recorded a televised tribute to the late Queen, where she recalls her unforgettable smile and praised the Queen for her strength throughout her reign. And we can play some of that statement now.
She has been part of our lives forever. I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there. It must have been so difficult for her being a solitary woman. There weren't women prime ministers or women presidents. She was the only one, so I think she carved her own role. She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, you know, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. You know, that smile is unforgettable.
Well, that full interview with Camilla, the Queen Consort, will be aired on BBC One shortly before a national minute silence, which takes place at 8 o'clock tonight. Now, today is the fourth and final full day that the Queen's coffin will lie in state here in Westminster Hall. It was announced last night that the accessible queue for people with disabilities has already been permanently closed to new entrants after reaching full capacity. Visitors in the main queue, that's what we're seeing here, they've been warned that the waiting time from the back is currently at least 14 hours. It's likely to get even longer as Sunday goes ahead. And our reporter Lauren Moss is at the back of the queue for us this morning. Lauren, how are you? How is everybody getting on there?
Morning, John. Yes, just a few miles away from you at what is the very start of what's going to be a long day for many people here in Southwark Park, setting off on their route to pay their respects to the Queen lying in state in Westminster Hall. And this is Southwark Park, the very start of the queue, and it's split into 4 zones. This is zone 1, and over here you can see some people collecting their coloured wristbands, which they will wear, and it numbers them throughout the queue so they can dip out and get a drink if they want to, and then go back in so they don't lose their place. And I'm just going to try and grab some people to speak to us. Hi there, we're from BBC News. Can you just talk to us about, as you can see, everyone's very much in a rush to try and get in. But as you mentioned there, the accessibility queue was closed yesterday afternoon. They're not allowing anybody else into that queue, but we did speak to a man overnight, Ibrahim, who's recently had a bypass surgery, and he was hoping to join that queue but wasn't able to. So instead, he's now toughing it out on the long route like everybody else.
Good morning. I've been through quadruple heart bypass in February because and I've been through cancer twice before, and I found out that some of the cancer treatment damaged my arteries, so I had to have this operation. I was hoping to join the accessible queue, but unfortunately they closed it down permanently, so this is the only way for us to do it. So we're braving it up.
Just one sec. Well, we're in the queue now, and we've just met this lady who's here from France and just collected her wristband. Why was it important for you to come? Why are you here?
To pay my respect for the Queen, for the people, for the country. Yeah, really.
And are you ready for a long day ahead?
Maybe.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, not many people wanting to stop and talk to us at this moment because they are racing on their way down towards the Thames path. Well, they'll snake along the River Thames, making their way towards Westminster Hall, but they won't be getting there probably until early evening. And what we're going to see now is a bit of a balancing act with those managing the queues and those stewards that have been working day and night to make sure that anybody who's entering that queue gets through to Westminster Hall before the queue closes officially at 6:30 tomorrow morning, but likely to close much sooner before that to make sure that everyone arrives here, gets to go through. We're going to try and find some more people to speak to, John, and we'll keep you updated throughout the morning.
All right, Lauren, thank you very much indeed. You found one. Well done. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? People want to get into that queue and get moving as soon as they possibly can when they join it, especially if they've travelled far like that lady has from France. We're assuming that as the day goes on, the authorities will have to give some sort of indication about when that cut-off point will be, if people will need to plan if they're heading to London. So we'll bring you any news on that as the programme goes on this morning. Now, of course, religion was a significant influence throughout the Queen's life, and her funeral tomorrow will, of course, reflect her deep personal Christian faith. And our religion editor, Alim Makboul, has been looking at what the Queen's private faith meant to her and the role it played throughout her life and her reign.
Throughout her reign, in good times and bad, the Queen drew heavily from her faith to guide her. And this little church on the edges of the Balmoral estate was a place she held dear. She came to services at Crathy Kirk all her life, with very little ceremony, though there was a royal seat on a royal pew where she always sat.
The Queen was a very regular churchgoer. If she was here, almost always would come to church.
For 15 years, Ken Mackenzie was domestic chaplain to the Queen. And he'll be among those at Windsor for her final service.
Some of the moments I would cherish most would be moments when the Queen would speak to me as a parish minister. I remember being over there one evening. So I asked her what her favourite hymn was. She said to me that her fondest memory ever of a Christian song was her father singing to her at her bedside as she was going to bed.
The hymn she remembered her father singing was based on the parable of the sheep lost in open country. Although the road be rough and steep, I go to the desert to find my sheep. Lord Sentamu, former Archbishop of York, is one of a small team that came up with the original order of service for the Queen's funeral. He says her knowledge of Scripture was remarkable.
She knows the Psalms by heart and can recite them. So you can be in a conversation. One time, she was going through quite a trying period. We've been talking, and suddenly, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Whence cometh my help? My help cometh from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And you knew, whatever difficulty she's going through, her anchor is in God.
And it was that anchor of her faith that once led the Queen to say this.
As dark as death can be, particularly for those suffering with grief, light and life are greater.
Alim Makboul, BBC News.
Well, details of how you can watch the Queen's funeral tomorrow have now been released. We can give you that information. So the state funeral service is being held at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning in Westminster Abbey. It's going to be broadcast on TV, of course, here on BBC One, on ITV and on Sky. And for those wanting to be there in person, there will be special viewing places along the route of the funeral procession here in London, and then later in the day also in Windsor. And the public procession in London will be between Westminster Abbey and Wellington Arch, while the Windsor procession will travel along the Long Walk before going inside the castle grounds. That's where a private service for the family and close friends will be. There will also be big screens and 125 cinemas showing the services around the UK. So huge numbers of people expected to watch and experience that tomorrow. Charlotte Gallagher is with us this morning. Hi Charlotte. You've been watching this queue over the last 3 days. One more day of people watching and chatting to go. What are you noticing about what people are saying this morning?
It's strange. A lot of people are saying they had no intention of joining this queue a few days ago. Then suddenly they find themselves getting up at midnight and coming down, because almost they say it's like a magnetism to join the queue. They want to be here, to have that experience, to be in this queue. We've seen people taking selfies with each other, total strangers 12 hours ago, but at the end they want to take a photo to remember that day. And you also see people who perhaps haven't planned, they've made the decision spur of the moment, perhaps on the way home from work, and they're in flip-flops, they're in high heels, and they're standing for 12 hours. And that's why it's been so good that you've had the Scouts, you've had the Red Cross handing out blankets, hot drinks. What's been really humbling as well is a number of veterans, especially elderly veterans you've seen making their way through this queue over hours and hours. They've got their medals pinned to their chest. They've got their beret on, and I spoke to one lady yesterday who served in Iraq, and she said she just felt it was so important for her and her son that was with her to pay their respects to the Queen, and she said it was her commander-in-chief, and she felt she had to be here for this.
It's good to see people have come prepared with hats and thick coats on, because I don't think it's been quite as chilly last night, but the last couple of nights have been much colder than we've been seeing of late.
I was really relieved when I got up this morning and I saw the weather forecast, because when I got here yesterday morning, I was bundled up, but some people were just in thin jackets and they looked so cold. One woman said after about 4 hours, her whole body was aching. So today, a lot more people, I think, are a bit more wrapped up against the elements. But it's strange, you'd think queuing for that number of hours, the mood would be quite grumpy, I suppose, but actually people are chatting to each other, they're laughing. Yesterday when they were told it's only another 45 minutes to go, there was a big cheer that went up in the crowd. People sharing snacks, sharing drinks, sharing stories, lots of photos being taken. It's a really, really lovely atmosphere. And what country does queues better than Britain?
We're showing the world what we can do, aren't we? And it's interesting as you get closer, as they get closer and closer and closer to the hall, and we're right outside of the Palace of Westminster here, you notice that it kind of gets quieter. You get that ebullience and almost relief that people experience initially as they meet one another and they chat and they take those selfies Charlotte was talking about. But then as they approach here, just outside the palace, and they confront the reality of what they're about to experience, then it kind of calms down and it becomes much quieter and people prepare to enter Westminster Hall. Well, you can follow all the events and developments leading up to the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on BBC News, on the website and on iPlayer. We will of course be back with more throughout breakfast this morning and on BBC One throughout the day. But we were talking then about it being slightly warmer here last night. Chris has the weather for London, for the queue and for the rest of the UK this morning. Hi, Chris.
Hello there. The weather today for many of you is looking dry, but there is more cloud around than we had yesterday. The best of any sunshine across parts of southern Wales and southwest England. The cloud today will be thick enough for a few passing showers across parts of northwest England, across northern Scotland and around some eastern areas of England, particularly near the North Sea coast. But away from these areas, the weather should stay dry and temperatures about 17 or 18 degrees Celsius for a high today. Now for the Queen's lying in state, again the weather is going to be dry today, but there will be more in the way of cloud, temperatures about 17 degrees. And for the state funeral tomorrow, again it's looking dry, there will be occasional brighter spells. Overnight tonight, showers will continue across eastern areas of England for a time, and then later in the night we'll see some thicker cloud working in to the northwest of the UK, bringing a few splashes of light patchy rain. Where the clouds break, we'll see temperatures dipping down into single figures, so for a few areas it will be a chilly start to the day tomorrow. Again, quite a bit of cloud around, fair amount of dry weather, some bright or sunny spells, but across the northwest the cloud will be thickest and we'll have a few areas of light rain from time to time. It does turn slightly warmer, temperatures tomorrow reaching a high of 19.
Thanks, Chris. We will, of course, be back with John and the team in Westminster throughout the morning. But at 6:20, let's take a look at the day's other news. A man's been charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in central London on Friday. Mohammed Rahman was also charged with assault and 2 counts of threatening a person with a blade. A female officer suffered a stab wound to the arm and has been discharged from hospital, while a male officer remains under medical supervision. Police have charged a man with a public order offence for allegedly leaving the queue of mourners to approach the Queen's coffin on Friday morning. The Metropolitan Police say Mohammed Khan will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Monday. He's the second person to be charged with committing an offence while in the queue to see the Queen lying in state. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says investigations into possible Russian war crimes are continuing in the city of Izium, which was recently retaken from Russian forces. A number of bodies have been exhumed from the mass burial site on the edge of the city, and officials say more than 400 people are buried there. Our correspondent James Waterhouse has been monitoring events from Kiev.
Ukraine is as determined to document as it is to fight. In Izium, liberation has turned more bitter than sweet. Hundreds of bodies, now a dossier of evidence over claims of Russian war crimes. All uncovered after a series of Ukrainian counter-offensives in the northeast. In newly released footage, what Russia wants to say is that their plans have not changed. As they look to hit back, the US had this warning if chemical or nuclear weapons were being considered.
Don't. It will change the face of war, unlike anything since World War II.
What is never altered is the enduring human cost of this war. Alexander Shapoval performed as a ballet dancer for 28 seasons at the Kiev Opera House, before volunteering to fight for Ukraine. This week, he was killed in a mortar strike in the east.
There's not a single person in the theatre who wouldn't love Alexander. He was a talented artist and an incredibly kind person. He could not go and defend his family, friends, and all Ukrainians.
What this is a combination of grief and pride, not just of Alexander's accomplishments in the Opera House, but because of the cause he died for. And that's the point. Ukraine has always known why it was fighting and the price it was willing to pay. It's hard to imagine another escalation in a conflict already full of incomprehensible pain. James Waterhouse, BBC News in Kiev.
Hundreds of thousands of people in Japan have been urged to evacuate their homes following warnings of unprecedented risks from an approaching storm. Winds could reach 168 miles per hour and some areas could experience 20 inches of rainfall in just 24 hours. A special typhoon warning is in place in Kyushu, the southernmost of the 4 islands that make up the main body of Japan. As the cost of living crisis continues to bite, one school in the East Midlands is trying to help parents ease the pressure on household budgets by providing free school uniforms and trips for all pupils. Simon Ward has this report.
Fruit salad is on the menu for this lesson at the Wells Academy at Mapperley in Nottingham. While many schools will ask parents to pay for the ingredients, they don't here. New joiners also get free blazers, a tie, calculators and other equipment. The driving force behind the policy is the school principal, who grew up in a low-income family in Colville in Leicestershire.
I grew up with a single parent. There was a brother and a sister and my mum. We were kind of free school meal students. So when I've become a principal, I think it's very important that opportunities for everybody and be really thinking about every decision that people make. So, for example, some people may say, well, that's only a little bit, but I know for my family, a little bit was a lot.
And what would you say to someone who thinks you should bring another teacher in rather than funding blazers, etc.?
My argument is, if we're delivering that as a school, as a curriculum, we shouldn't be asking people to pay for this, because actually that's what we're saying they have to do. So once you make money a barrier, you're creating a barrier that shouldn't be there. And actually, if it's right for your curriculum and it's right for your students, every single student should be able to do it. And actually, even if one student can't do that, it's not right and it's not fair.
All these extra activities can mount up to a lot of money each term, especially school trips. And the pupils here say their families appreciate the school funding these activities.
I think that's absolutely amazing because it does provide a lot of opportunity. For a lot of families probably wouldn't be able to afford it, and then that child just wouldn't be able to have that opportunity, and I really don't think that that's fair.
Well, my parents are glad about that and they are happy. They don't need to stress about that, like they already have so many things to think about, so that's great.
It's quite shocking, as in for some families it's obviously a struggle, so you gotta let them give them an opportunity to pay for it, but if they can't pay for it, I say just give them for free.
Other activities, including music lessons outside of the regular curriculum, are also free.
They all have the same, they all have to bring the same thing in every day, and there's it reduces any levels of bullying that might come around due to not having enough money, and any parents that think that their child might not be able to get the best education because they've not got the right equipment or the right uniform. It's completely level, they can all have the exact same thing.
The cost of living challenges we face aren't going away soon, but this school says the policy of funding activities and equipment is here to stay.
Simon Ward reporting there. Now, we talked a lot on Breakfast this week about the Queen's passion for horses, and that passion cemented a decades-long friendship with the Carnarvon family, who should regularly visit their Highclere estate in North Hampshire. The Earl and Duchess of Carnarvon have been sharing their memories of the monarch with our reporter Steve Humphrey.
Highclere Castle, one of Britain's iconic stately homes, set in 5,000 acres near Newbury. Over the years, Her Majesty the Queen was a regular visitor.
It was somewhere where she could sit and have a cup of tea and talk and relax, away from any cameras or any other people looking over her shoulder, perhaps.
It was just something aside from the really serious, detailed affairs of state and absolute stresses in that kind of area.
Famous and instantly recognisable as the setting for the TV series Downton Abbey, the real-life Highclere is the home of the Earl and Countess of Carnarvon.
Quite fun with the one of you and all.
The connection between the Queen and Highclere was her long friendship with the current Earl's father, who was known as Porchy by friends, as his title had been Lord Porchester.
My father-in-law was first and foremost a friend, and then they shared an interest in racing, a passion for the racehorse and breeding, and would take him to the racecourse, but also a passion for the countryside. She was deeply rooted in the countryside, in the British countryside.
She used to come down for the weekends, especially there was one in the spring and some other times, and we'd go out onto the stud farm and look at my father's horses or her horses that happened to be staying up at the stud farm, and then her stud at Polehampton over by Kingsclere, and sometimes even with the horses in training. So I got to be used to wandering amongst foals and yearlings of Her Majesty's and my father's. It's just the way of life at the time.
The 7th Earl of Carnarvon was the Queen's racing manager from 1969 until his death in 2001. He spoke about the Queen's racing expertise on BBC South Today in 1990.
She's a very good judge of bloodstock and knows a lot about pedigrees and a lot about racing, but sadly has insufficient time to give to going racing, but she watches quite a lot on television.
First past the post, a length ahead. A magnificent win for the Queen.
As a result of the strong friendship, the Queen was the current Earl's godmother. Did Her Majesty ever have any words of advice for you as you were growing up, as your godmother?
I think only in that Majesty's always been very good conversationalists with people of all ages, including the young, and was always willing to engage in something about what you were doing at school, or even if you had some kind of views on something, and she'd also steer you in a better direction if you thought it might be going in the wrong way. But I would think she always had very, very good advice for people generally.
It wasn't just racing that brought the Queen to Highclere. In the 1950s, the Duke of Edinburgh also played in a cricket match here.
It was at Highclere Park, Hampshire, in aid of the National Playing Fields Association.
Along with her passion for the countryside and for racing, the Earl of Carnarvon remembers that the Queen was a devoted Christian.
There's, an immense sense of wanting to be the head of state and be the right thing and an anchor in the middle of everything, never taking part in politics as a constitutional monarch, but being the steadfast leader that people can actually look up to.
And he believes the country was lucky to have a monarch who reigned for so long.
I think very, very fortunate in global history to have had one such steadfast leader for quite so many years. Early 50s to now is quite extraordinary because most countries in the world do not have a leader of great stature of that longevity.
Is it a contribution that will really only be recognised properly in years to come?
I hope. I certainly recognised it in the time that I've been, well, since I've been alive. She's been part of everybody's life since they were born and were watching TV and the cycle of the year. And again, it's been a privilege and an unexpected honour, if you like, for myself to have met her. So I think I've been aware of an extraordinary woman who it's been a privilege to meet.
Britannia lay off St. Lucia, the island known as the Helen of the West Indies.
And the Countess thinks that strengthening the Commonwealth through a series of overseas trips was the Queen's greatest achievement.
The Commonwealth, which goes beyond borders, beyond colour or race, beyond country, just bringing people together, is the most extraordinary legacy and very much that of Her Majesty and I think His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It was in the countryside and around horses that the Queen's smile showed how much she was enjoying herself, and the pressures of being monarch lifted just for a short time. And the people here at Highclere are proud that this is one of the places she was able to relax.
When she came here, and whatever the weather, standing in a field with her dogs, she loved working her dogs. Those were private moments for her, and they were just moments in a slightly different world apart.
Precious memories. That was the Countess of Carnarvon finishing that report from Steve Humphrey. I'll be back with you soon with more news and sport, but let's rejoin John in Westminster. Morning to you, John. We've been observing from Salford the snake seems to be motoring along quite quickly this morning.
It is, Nina. I get the impression that the authorities here in London are trying to get as many people through Westminster Hall as they possibly can today. So they're still giving a chance for people to reflect and to pause and to have that time inside. But they're trying to get the queue moving because they know that on a Sunday, on a dry day, it's likely to get very, very busy. The queue's likely to get long as the day goes on. And of course, there's only 24 hours now that Westminster Hall will remain open to the public. I just wanted to show you this pile of blankets. We have a sort of very effective recycling operation in place here. So what happens is that the Salvation Army and various other charities give blankets to people at the back of the queue if they look like they haven't brought enough coats and they're not going to be warm enough in those hours, and they can keep warm as they wait through the night. And then as they get to this point, just before they arrive at the Palace of Westminster, they can dump their blankets here, and then these are collected, and then they go back to the beginning of the queue, 5 or 6 miles away for anybody who's cold. So it's a rather lovely way of everybody keeping warm if they can. I have to say, people seem to be well protected without the blankets this morning. Lots of people in, hello, morning. Lots of people with their mittens on and their scarves and their hats. They've come well prepared. It's not been quite as cold last night as it was the night before, but certainly people don't want to be held up when they're in the darkness overnight. Just thought we should explain, before we have a chat to some people in the queue, a bit about what we can expect over the next 24 hours, because it's going to be a momentous time, and I know lots of people want to keep a track of events. So let me just run this through you. What we know is that the Queen's coffin will lie in state for this, the fourth and final day in Westminster Hall, and then there will be a 1-minute silence held across the UK at 8 p.m. tonight, where people can mark that silence either privately in their own homes, of course, on the street with their neighbours, or at lots of community events as well, and vigils that have been organised right across the country. Today as well, the King will hold an audience with Prime Minister Liz Truss at Buckingham Palace. We know that he's also going to be meeting, along with the Queen Consort, heads of other states and official overseas guests at the palace who are gathering here in the capital ahead of the funeral tomorrow. But let's talk to some of the people who've waited overnight. Hello, good morning. Maybe we have a chat with you. You're live on BBC Breakfast. Can we hold you up for a second? I know you've waited all night. Is that all right? Tell us your names and where you've come from.
I'm Sheila, I'm from Blackpool.
Hi, Sheila.
I'm Becky, I'm from Blackpool.
Hi, Becky.
I'm daughter.
And tell us, why did you want to come and queue through the night, and how's it been?
It's been long. But we've met some lovely friends en route. Yeah, but a right good crack along the way, haven't we?
Has it? Nice atmosphere?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Very good.
Really good atmosphere. Everyone's got on really well. It's been.
You've come together?
No, just met them on the route. Just walked away and just enjoyed it. Been superb.
Yeah. It is amazing that the new friendships that people are forming.
I know.
Is it surprising you've got a big smile on your face even after 12 hours of waiting?
Yeah. I'm just delirious now.
Yeah. Well, you're nearly there. I mean, you're literally 20 minutes. You'll be inside Westminster Hall. As you approach that moment, the reality of seeing the coffin, the reason you've come. I guess does the mood change a little bit?
I think so, yeah. It's the sombre mood then, it's the emotions, isn't it? You've come here to pay your respects and for 12 hours and then I think it'd just be, the emotion would just, I don't know how it's going to be, but it's just, I don't know, it's just that emotion. Why have you come here? You've come here to pay your respects to a lady that's given 70 years great service to our country. Yeah. Just outstanding, and so I think it's the least we can do, just to see the crowds around here that have done it.
I think it'll be emotional when we get inside, definitely.
Yeah. I guess after being up all night and in the cold and in the dark, you kind of, your barriers are down a bit as well, aren't you? You sort of probably feel a bit more vulnerable yourself than you might normally do. Yeah, are you tired?
Yeah, definitely.
It's feeling a bit more surreal now, we're getting closer.
Yeah. So when you know that you know, she's within touching distance now, and it's been a long time, but she's been such a brilliant person, a brilliant queen to us, so we owe it to her really, just to go and say goodbye.
And you come down from Blackpool specially?
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're staying till Monday.
So you stay for the funeral? You stay for the funeral?
Yeah.
So we've got another long night ahead tonight.
You have, haven't you? Where are you going to go for the funeral?
We've not had a chance to decide yet.
No.
You need to get some sleep. Have you got a hotel? Have you got somewhere to stay? Thank goodness that you're not in a tent or something. No. All right, well, look, you take care. Thank you. It's nice to see you all together. And I'm sorry to hold you up a bit, but thank you for your time. Take care. Bye-bye. It is amazing how prepared everybody seems to be to chat. Now and again somebody's a little shy or says that their English isn't good enough, but pretty much everybody you meet here wants to share their stories, wants to explain why they're here, and just wants to pay tribute to the monarch whose coffin they've come to pay respects at. Helena Wilkinson is on the Mall at Buckingham Palace, which of course will become the focus of a lot of attention over the next 24 hours as well. And Helena, we've seen so many crowds there over the last week or more now. How are things this morning?
Well, you can see it's pretty quiet here this morning outside the palace. Just some people have started to arrive, John, but we are expecting, as we have seen here over the past couple of days, tens of thousands of people who have gathered here. This, of course, has been one of the focal points for people. Buckingham Palace, the residence which many people across the world associate with the Queen. And in fact, yesterday, the crowds were so big here that people were queuing around the edge of the palace. So I think we're going to expect a lot of people here today. What we can expect in terms of the timetable for the King, he has got another busy day today. Later on here at Buckingham Palace, the King will be hosting a formal state reception here, and that is for heads of state and official overseas guests. He will be joined by his wife, Camilla, the Queen Consort, and it will be the first opportunity that those guests who will be attending the Queen's funeral tomorrow will be able to gather together in one place. We understand that diplomacy, politics, that will of course be put to one side, though, for the moment, while the official mourning period continues and until after the funeral. We know, of course, now that President Biden, Joe Biden, the US president, arrived at Stansted Airport last night. We're showing you those pictures now. You can see President Biden with his wife, Jill, coming off Air Force One, arriving at Stansted Airport, and he will be meeting the King a bit later on. We expect him and his wife to be at that state reception here at the palace later. And the guests will be given the opportunity, including President Biden, to sign an official book of condolence at Lancaster House, not too far away from where we are. And also, if they wish, they will be able to pay their respects in Westminster Hall to see the Queen lying in state. So another busy day for the King. We're expecting, as I say, big crowds here outside the palace. And I think for the crowds, they will be hoping that they may see a member of the royal family today, as we have seen over the past few days. The King, members of the royal family have very much wanted to meet all of those people that have been here, where you are, John, to thank them. And it's very clear that the royal family are very grateful and touched by the outpouring of support from so many people, not just in this country, but across the world. John.
Yeah, Helena, thank you very much indeed. Thanking seems to be a common theme, doesn't it? The public thanking the monarch and paying tribute to her, and then in turn the royal family thanking the public for turning out and doing this. Hello, good morning. You're live on BBC Breakfast. Can we just delay you for 1 second? Do you mind just to tell us how it's been and why you've come?
Well, we've come to pay our respects, but it has been gruelling. It's been tough.
Gruelling, yeah.
We left the park at 7:30, wasn't it, last night?
Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah, but it's been tough, but it's worth it.
Nearly 12 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been worth it though. We wanted to all pay our respects as a family, and just really sad that she's not with us anymore.
Can you say it's been tough? What's been the toughest bit of the last 12 hours of waiting?
I think just sort of starting, stopping and through the night.
A lot of stopping where it's all packed up, where it goes down to narrow parts. So that's been hard. Everyone's been sitting on the floor or sitting on benches, but we're there now.
We had naps on the way, so
we did.
How'd you nap on the way? Were you walking?
I just kind of sat and just sort of
really.
Yeah, mate, we both managed to nap a little bit. Sat down.
That is good napping. I'm jealous of that.
I've been napping, walking, believe it or not.
What? How did you manage that?
I can do that.
I've got photographic evidence.
Napping and walking?
Yeah, I fell asleep at the Killers concert the other week. I did.
OK, I think we've got a story with you. This is a remarkable talent. I've never heard of this before. I'm worried about you losing your cue, having talked about how stopping and starting. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
He's awake and walking at the moment.
Morning.
OK. Morning. Filming us, filming you. Good morning. We're talking about people who've come to London from all over the country, but on Breakfast we've also wanted to get a sense of how people across the country who can't make it to the capital have been marking this extraordinary time in our history, and how people around the country are paying respect to the Queen. And Coletta Smith and David Wallace-Lockhart have got in a car and they've been driving to different communities to find out what the mood is and what the anticipation is ahead of tomorrow. Let's hear from them.
Get yourself buckled in and we'll head off on our grand tour.
Jade, hi. Travelling across the north of England yesterday, the only queue we encountered was at the bar.
Yeah, of course you can. But people are marking this weekend in weird and wonderful ways.
Football match on Saturday.
So you run the park run here in Saltaire?
I do. We met runners and worship leaders.
This is the Grand Hall at Victoria Mill.
We heard about plans for food banks, festivals and football matches.
That's some view.
This morning, I'm behind the wheel as we leave Lancashire and head south.
First stop, Cheshire. Go. And it's Ellesmere Port. See you in a bit. I'm meeting the delightful Andrew and his family.
Hey! I'll show you.
He's made and sent so many cards to the Queen over the last few years that they practically became pen pals.
This one's like a letter.
The Queen was glad to learn that you like to help others and to know that you and your brother and sister, Aaron and Amelia, have raised money, bless you, to support children's charities.
I write, Happy Christmas, or how much we raised, or when it's her birthday, or when Prince Philip died.
You wrote a card and sent it?
Yeah, or her 70 years on the throne.
That's a really lovely idea.
Yeah.
Who's next then? Who are you writing to next?
Good luck for Prince Charles for being king.
Yeah.
And I'll do a Happy Christmas one to Prince William.
On Monday. which is going to be the Queen's funeral. Do you think you'll be watching that, or what are your plans as a family?
We're hopefully going to watch Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and 5.
That is a great idea.
Down at the waterfront, I want to find out what people have planned for the funeral tomorrow.
It's videos, and it's if you pop down, it's there.
It's not long before I bump into YouTuber Xander and his dad. How's Xander planning to spend his bank holiday?
Probably doing stuff on YouTube, to be honest. Maybe occasionally popping downstairs to have a looking at the TV, but yeah, pretty much just YouTube.
Do you have a television? Turns out we're not the only ones travelling around at the moment. Loris has come over from New Zealand for a canal barge holiday.
I think it's a very important moment in history, isn't it? It's possibly not something that we'll experience again in our lifetime.
And you'll potentially find somewhere for the funeral tomorrow, is that right?
That's what our hope is, yes. We're hoping to be back in Chester where we can get a good signal and watch it on television.
The Kiwi flag is at half-mast for the Queen.
As we get back on the road, this time heading for Wales.
So it's us officially entering Conway, yeah.
I've got the best deal this afternoon. A proper day out at the seaside. And here in Llandudno, the pier is packed. But it'll be a different scene tomorrow as the whole thing will be closed off.
Bank holiday is usually the busiest throughout the year for us, but we just thought we made the decision before it'd be right in the eyes of the public as well. Also, all our staff, all our team, they want to spend the day remembering.
You've never had any royals?
No, not yet, not yet.
On this particular wheel?
Not yet, no.
But you're
well, hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully, soon. Hopefully they'll come down.
So you run the pier here, but you're not a fan of heights?
I'm not, no. It's the second time I've been on it. My colleague who runs the wheel, he does on purpose, stops it right at the top for us. He knows full well I'm scared of heights.
I'm dropping in on Alicia.
Alicia, hi. I'm David. Nice to meet you.
She's an artist who posts her work on TikTok. Her recent painting of the Queen has around 2.5 million views.
I spent ages and many hours looking at her face and trying to work out her features and everything. So yeah, I was really upset. So I sort of felt like I knew her.
Sometimes being far away doesn't mean you can't feel close to someone.
Everywhere we've been on this road trip has felt very far from London, and it's felt very far from those official events. But still so many people wanting to mark this weekend somehow.
And we've ended up in a land that's built around the holiday industry, but this bank holiday weekend looks like no other.
Yeah. Should we start thinking about heading back?
I'm not going anywhere until I finish this ice cream and devour the flake.
That's a good point.
David and Coletta making the most of their journey there. We're here just outside the Palace of Westminster as people make their final approach into Westminster Hall. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hello there. We're from the BBC, from BBC News. You're live on BBC.
Yeah.
Can we just ask why you've come? Why did you want to pay tribute to the Queen?
Just thought I needed to do it, and that was all to it.
You needed to do it? Yeah.
Yes.
Where have you come from?
From Liverpool.
From Liverpool?
Yes.
And you've been up all night?
Yes, from 8 o'clock. So.
How are you feeling?
Tired, but glad I'm nearly there.
You're nearly there. How are the feet?
Sore.
Yeah, I bet. People's back sore, knees sore, feet sore. But thank you very much indeed, sir. Yeah, but they're almost there. And they've had a slightly warmer night than people did yesterday because it's slightly milder. Chris has the weather for London and for the rest of the UK. Morning, Chris.
Hello again. For most of you, the day ahead is looking dry, but there is more cloud around than we've had for the last few days. The best of the sunshine likely across parts of Wales and southwest England, whereas for Scotland and eastern areas of England, we've got much thicker cloud moving in, and indeed, underneath this area of cloud, we've got a couple of weak weather fronts diving southwards around the North Sea. That will just increase the thickness of the cloud to bring a few passing showers, and we've picked up some of those showers already this morning, affecting northern Scotland. One or two running through the North Channel. You could see one of those across the Isle of Man into parts of northwest England around Greater Manchester and Merseyside. And we have some showers also running down the North Sea, affecting eastern areas of Scotland and eastern coastal counties of England. Now, through the day, the best of the sunshine for southern Wales and southwest England, although it will brighten up for northern Scotland later on as well. We could see a few showers working into East Anglia and southeast England, but they'll be light and fleeting, and for many of you, probably squeezing between any showers. Temperatures today for most ranging between 15 and 17 degrees Celsius. Now, today's the last day of the Queen's lying in state, and we're looking at another dry day in London. There's just a small chance of a shower as we head towards the evening time. And for tomorrow for the state funeral, again, the weather is looking dry. Overnight tonight, we'll continue to see a few showers for a time working in across northwest England, perhaps a few moving to North Wales and an increasing number of showers into the Hebrides. But otherwise, it's a dry night with some clear spells. Where we see the clearest of the weather overnight, temperatures dip down into single figures, but otherwise, temperatures about 10 to 12 degrees. Now, tomorrow we see thicker cloud working into the northwest of the country, and actually there's a weak weather front here that will be bringing a few spots of light rain. Nothing significant, mind you, accumulating through the day. A few breaks in the cloud, eastern Scotland, and again there could be a few towards Wales and the southwest of England. That's where we'll see some of the highest temperatures, up to 19 degrees. And then deeper into the new week, we've still got high pressure influencing the weather in the south, but these weather fronts start to become much more active by the time we get to Thursday, bringing a spell of rain southwards and eastwards across the country. So weather-wise, on Tuesday, another weak weather front coming into the northwest of the country, bringing again the threat of a few spots of rain. Otherwise, it's largely dry, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright or sunny spells coming through. This weather front actually will be bringing some slightly milder air with it, so temperatures could reach around 18 to 20 across England and Wales, 18 there for Belfast and 17 for Glasgow. It is fairly quiet weather-wise until we get to Thursday, when that weather front brings more active zone of rain across the country with strengthening winds for a time across the northwest. That's how the weather's looking.
Thank you, Chris. We will be back with John and the team in London shortly, speaking with those in the queue and, of course, looking ahead to tomorrow's funeral. But for now, let's take a look at the day's other news. A man has been charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in central London on Friday. Mohammed Rahman was also charged with assaults and 2 counts of threatening a person with a blade. A female police officer suffered a stab wound to the arm and has been discharged from hospital, while a male officer remains under medical supervision. Police have charged a man with a public order offence for allegedly leaving the queue of mourners to approach the Queen's coffin on Friday evening. The Metropolitan Police say Mohammed Khan will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Monday. He's the second person to be charged with committing an offence while in the queue to see the Queen lying in state. The UN's nuclear watchdog says Ukraine's huge Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has begun receiving power from the national grid again. The plant was seized by Russian forces within days of the war starting in February. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says investigations into possible Russian war crimes are continuing in the city of Izium following the discovery of mass graves. Officials say more than 400 people are buried there. Hundreds of thousands of people in Japan have been urged to evacuate their homes following warnings of unprecedented risks from an approaching storm. Winds could reach 168 miles per hour, and some areas could experience 20 inches of rainfall in just 24 hours. A special typhoon warning is in place for Kyushu. That's the southernmost of the 4 main islands of Japan. On to sport now. Manchester City have moved to the top of the Premier League, beating Wolves 3-0, while a stunning hat-trick from Son Heung-min saw Tottenham beat Leicester 6-2. Those games, like hundreds across the country, saw supporters and players pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. Joe Linsky reports.
Across football, the tributes continued, first in silence, then in song. Three top-flight games went on yesterday at Spurs. The England captain stood and sung. Minutes later, he scored. James Maddison for Leicester made it 2-2. Still, though, the Foxes haven't on the bench. Now at his brilliant best, he had a hat-trick in 13 breathless minutes. Spurs won this remarkable match. 6 started fast.
Ball in on, Manchester City ahead already!
They went 1-0 up in 11, so when Wolves went down to 10, this match felt as good as done, and Nathan Collins knew it. City went 3-0 up through Phil Foden, and while for Wolves this was miserable, still on 70 minutes, they stopped.
In the Premier League's other match yesterday, it finished 1-1 between Newcastle and Bournemouth. The visitors took the lead in the second half at St James's Park through Phil Billing. But Newcastle were awarded a penalty after Jefferson Lerma handled in the box. Club record signing Alexander Isak scored from the spot to rescue a point. Celtic will restore their 5-point lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership if they win at St Mirren at lunchtime. Rangers cut the gap to 2 points thanks to a 2-1 win over Dundee United at Ibrox. Antonio Cholak scored both goals as he ended their 3-match losing streak. There were also wins for Hibernian and Livingston, while St Johnstone drew with Ross County. And there are 4 games to come in the opening weekend of the Women's Super League today, with champions Chelsea travelling to newly promoted Liverpool this evening. Manchester United beat Reading 4-0 yesterday, with England's Alessio Russo on the score sheets. Aston Villa host Manchester City at 12:30 live on BBC Two and the iPlayer. St Helens will meet Leeds at Old Trafford in the Super League Grand Final next weekend after beating Salford City Reds. Salford had fought back in the second half to get within a point of Saints, but Joe Bennison scored a late try to make it certain. It finished 19-12 to St Helens, who were looking for their 4th consecutive title. Saracens came from behind to beat Harlequins 30-17 in Rugby Union's Premiership. Harlequins were leading 17-0 midway through the first half before Elliot Daly started the fight back with Saracens' first try and then secured the win with a penalty. Elsewhere, there were wins for Northampton, Leicester, Bristol and Sale. Returning now to our reflections on the Queen from across the UK. And when news of the Queen's death broke last week, there was one striking image in particular that was then broadcast around the world. It was a portrait of the monarch painted by the artist Richard Stone, and he's been speaking with our reporter Richard Daniel.
It was an image seen around the world when the Queen's death was announced last week. A portrait completed 30 years ago by the Essex artist Richard Stone.
This is the very first sketch for the portrait that I'd been commissioned to paint of the Queen. The very first sitting, when I was setting out to capture not just a likeness, but something in her face that reflected her personality.
A year later, this life-size head study was published with the Queen's approval, but some newspapers were scathing.
I was absolutely mortified and immediately phoned Buckingham Palace, feeling that I'd really let the Queen down. But I was reassured that everything was just fine. And so my right hand remained steady and I continued with the work.
After 9 more sittings, the portrait, commissioned by the Borough of Colchester, was unveiled at the National Portrait Gallery.
It was a labour of love. I enjoyed every single second of agonising over that picture. I so wanted to get it right. I mean, it was a huge privilege to spend so much time with the Queen, and she was terribly generous with her time. We all knew the Queen was 96 and getting increasingly frail. But her passing was so quick, none of us were prepared for that. And then coupled with the fact that it was my portrait that was being broadcast and transmitted around the world, it was a goosebump moment. I'm still trying to come to terms with it. I can't quite believe that we now have a king.
He painted his first royal portrait aged just 21, and it's his dearest wish that one day he might be asked to paint the king.
I'd love to. I've so enjoyed my sittings with him in the past. He's a truly remarkable man. The sittings with him have been a great pleasure because we've just talked about art. And if that opportunity ever arose, I'd love to accept the challenge.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with me, John Kay, in Westminster, where the Queen's body lies in state for a fourth full day. And Nina is in the studio in Salford. Here are our headlines at 7 o'clock. And the Queen's consort pays tribute to Queen Elizabeth II.
She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, you know, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. You know, that smile is unforgettable.
Thousands continue to pay their respects as the Queen's body lies in state for another 24 hours. Tomorrow's funeral will be shown on big screens and in cinemas across the UK. The US President Joe Biden has arrived in the UK ahead of the Queen's funeral. He will meet King Charles along with other world leaders at Buckingham Palace later on.
Away from Westminster, today's other headlines. A man's been charged with attempted...
Good morning, everybody. Sunday, the 18th of September. You're watching BBC Breakfast from Westminster, where the queue continues. People waiting in their thousands through the night again to pay their respects to the Queen. Today is the last full day that Her Majesty will lie in state inside the hall. And you can see that people are waiting inside and outside. That queue outside snaking around for mile after mile, and it's expected to get even longer in the hours ahead. Well, meanwhile, the Queen Consort Camilla has recorded a televised tribute in which she praised Elizabeth II for carving her own role in a male-dominated world.
She has been part of our lives forever. I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there. It must have been so difficult for her being a solitary woman. There weren't women prime ministers or women presidents. She was the only one, so I think she carved her own role. She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, you know, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. You know, that smile is unforgettable.
That smile remembered by the new Queen Consort, but also by so many people here in the queue as they approach Westminster Hall. That's the scene live just where we are this morning. This is the final stage of that wait. So the people you're seeing there who are getting close, they've been waiting through the night for 12, 13 hours in the darkness. And now it's warming up a little bit. The sun is up, and these people only have like 20 minutes or half an hour left to wait before they get inside the Palace of Westminster. But they've still got to go through security. They've got to go through those checks. But they have told us one after another in their thousands again this morning that they have no complaints despite the pain in their backs and their knees and their feet. They wouldn't have had it any other way. They wanted to be here. They felt a need to be here. And we're going to speak to some of them on Breakfast this morning. But as well as members of the public, of course, there are thousands of dignitaries, state leaders from around the world who are arriving in the UK, including the US President Joe Biden, who arrived here overnight ahead of the Queen's funeral tomorrow morning. Dignitaries, other world leaders arriving all the time to attend that service. Meanwhile, those members of the public who want to pay their respects here at Westminster Hall being warned that there is now a 12-hour wait. And it could get even longer in the hours ahead, as Duncan Kennedy reports.
Two countries united by one grief. President Biden landing last night at Stansted with the First Lady ahead of tomorrow's funeral. He's one of around 500 heads of state and dignitaries taking part. From presidents who cross oceans to people who line rivers, Mr. Biden arrives in a capital whose centre has been transformed.
Keep them going, guys, keep them going.
At its heart, a queue whose length is measured in hours, not yards. Some even have proof.
I've been here for 8 hours and 14 seconds, 14 minutes. That's how long I've been here for.
At times, the queue has been 10 miles long. For some, the walking brings weariness and a need to loosen the limbs. Not far behind them, someone honoured by the Queen, who knows all about pace and perseverance.
In my head, it was like, I have to join this queue, so I stopped all my plans for the weekend, got on the train this morning, met some friends to change my clothes, and here I am.
The queue's tempo has varied, but has consistently remained patient and determined. To many here, the Queen is not a, but the national treasure.
She's given us so much, she's given us her whole life, and I just rang Mum and I said, I think we just need to go.
What does she mean to you, the Queen?
I think quite a lot, because obviously we've all grown up with her being obviously our Queen, and she's had such an impact on all our lives. I think she means quite a lot to all of us.
I was a guardsman myself, working outside Buckingham Palace and the Tower in Windsor Castle. I feel quite a close affinity with the royal family. Especially the Queen. I've met her on occasions, and I just think it's my duty to come down and show my respects.
When this queue does finally close and the last person files past the Queen's coffin sometime early tomorrow morning, it'll mark the end of an unprecedented act of collective tribute. Attention will then move from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for the funeral. Last night, inside Westminster Hall, standing sentinel to their beloved grandmother, the Queen's 8 grandchildren, posted to all sides of the plinth. A symmetrical display of her extended family's devotion. Flowing around them, those who've come to pay respects to a long royal life, bookended by coronation and commemoration. Westminster Hall carrying the solemnity of a cathedral amid the silence of a library.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
At Buckingham Palace, King Charles has been meeting some of the Commonwealth leaders who've arrived for the funeral. They included the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He's previously declared himself a Republican, but said such matters were for another time. At Windsor Castle, they've been moving tens of thousands of flowers from well-wishers inside the castle grounds, ready for the burial ceremony, with the blooms all facing towards Her Majesty's beloved home. Tonight at 8 p.m, the country will hold a national moment of reflection for 1 minute, to stop and think about the life and legacy of the Queen. It comes ahead of tomorrow's funeral, a momentous occasion of state, a family farewell, and a full stop moment in this nation's history. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
We're just after 7 o'clock this Sunday morning, and that's the view across the bridge. You can see people queuing there as they approach the Palace of Westminster, and inside Westminster Hall, still they come in their thousands to file past the coffin, one in turn. These people have been up all night, queuing for 12, 13, 14 hours in the cold and in the darkness. And when they get inside the hall, it's only for a few seconds. You can see the authorities keen to give people a chance to spend their time there, but also to keep the queue moving, because so many people still joining miles further back. Well, today is the 4th and final full day that the Queen's coffin will lie inside Westminster Hall here. It was announced last night that the accessible queue for people with disabilities has already been permanently closed to new entrants after it reached full capacity. Visitors in the main queue here, I say it's moving steadily this morning, but people are being warned if they're just joining that the wait time is currently about 14 hours and it could get much longer as the day goes on, because it's the final full day. It is a Sunday, so for many people they're not working. And so as I arrived here in the capital last night from Bristol on the train, there were still loads of people arriving at Paddington from west of England, from the southwest of England, bringing flowers, heading here and determined to be part of this whole experience, to pay their respect. Our reporter Lauren Moss is at the back of the queue, so she's 6 or 7 miles at least from us here at Westminster this morning. And Lauren, this Sunday morning, people still joining.
Good morning, John. Yes, indeed they are. Like you say, it's the fourth and final day, the last chance really for people to come and pay their respects to the Queen and try and reach Westminster Hall near where you are. And I can tell you, we're speaking to the stewards this morning and they say it's much busier today at this time than it was this time yesterday. When people are coming in through the gates, not only are they being given their wristbands, they're being given blankets too, prepared for all weathers, although hopefully it will start to warm up as we go through the day. And here at the start of the Southwark Park queue, I'm joined by a couple of families here, a host of age groups. I'm just going to have a chat to them about why they've decided to come down. Tiffany, you're here with your 2 twin daughters. Why was it so important for you to make the journey here?
Well, we tried to come on Friday and got stuck. My husband got in and said it was such a special experience that we wanted to come too. So we saw the flowers on Friday and went to the palace. We just missed the King as he left the vigil going down the Mall. So we're here to try again, and we really just want to be part of this incredible piece of history, to have those memories for the children.
And what do you both think about the long day you've got ahead of you? How are you prepared?
We need to keep up our stamina, but enjoy it in the sights later on.
What about you? What will it mean to see the Queen in Westminster Hall? What do you think about it?
I think it's very important for everyone at this time.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope the queue goes well for you.
Thank you.
And we'll just nip round here and speak to Mum first. Over here, what's your name?
My name is Binuta.
And you're here with your son and daughter, 9 and 12 years old.
Yeah.
When was it you decided to come and join the queue?
It's the first of the day when I heard the news, and I'm really excited to come here. I'm privileged to be here.
And what do you think about being part of this?
I mean, I think it's a one-in-a-lifetime experience, obviously, as this will never happen in history again. So, I'm very excited to be here. But obviously it's still a really sad period as the Queen has just passed. So.
And I've been seeing a lot of families coming down. Do you know many of your friends that are making this journey?
No, I don't think so.
So you'll have something to tell them about heading back to school on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope the queue goes well for you. Let's head over here. As you can see, this is the last point in the park where they'll be crossing over the road towards Bermondsey, where I had a wander down before. There are some residents that have gone out there with tables, and they're giving out tea and coffee and cans of fizzy drinks and snacks to people, getting them ready at the start of the journey. But like you say, it could be 12 to 14 hours to walk to where you are, John, from here. So it's going to be a long day ahead, and I think everyone's just going to be watching closely to see if and when the queuing time will be stopped, because of course those that are organising this and all of the stewards that are greeting people today want to make sure that anyone who does arrive here is able to get through all those that long journey, that 10-mile journey to Westminster Hall before it closes officially at 6:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you very much indeed for now. Just watching those pictures, you can see how much busier it's getting, even compared with an hour ago. Charlotte Gallagher's here with us outside Westminster Hall. It's at the end of the queue. These people just about to get in. I guess at some point in the hours ahead, the authorities are going to have to explain how they will end the queue, because in 24 hours' time, Westminster Hall will be closed, and so they need to advise people when will be the cut-off point.
At some point, they are going to have to close the queue, so everyone in the queue gets the chance to see the Queen lying in state. The last thing people want is people queuing for 12, 14 hours, getting here, and it's closed. That would be awful. So the government are going to announce at some point the queue will be closed. The lying in state closes at 6:30. So if people are queuing
tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So if people are queuing for 12, 14 hours, we anticipate sometime this evening, sometime this afternoon, the queue will have to be closed. So I would say if you do want to come down and you want to see the Queen lying in state, it's probably best to do it sooner rather than later. There's still time this morning to join the queue, but if you leave it till later this afternoon, later this evening, there is a chance that you might miss out.
And we've already seen that people with mobility issues, disabilities, the accessible queue has closed permanently already.
Yes, and lots of people were upset by that, saying they hadn't had a chance to come down yet and they wanted to join that queue because unfortunately they can't join the main queue. So they were very, very disappointed. What I would say, I know a lot of people have been saying there's a lot of waste going on, people carrying food, there's blankets being given out. The blankets are being washed and they're being redonated or given to people at the back of the queue who need them. All food that isn't opened is being taken by the Scouts and is being distributed to charities like food banks and homeless shelters. Things aren't just going in the bin, because I've noticed a lot of people saying on Twitter, for example, things are being wasted. They're not. Things are being given out to people who need them. So please don't worry about that. That's what's going on today.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And it's also lovely to see people sharing stuff. I've seen people sharing snacks and sharing, flasks of coffee and that kind of thing, isn't it? There's a lot of sharing going on here.
Even David Beckham, didn't he? He got the donuts out and was sharing them with people. Imagine sharing a donut with David Beckham. You're standing next to David Beckham for 12 hours.
Imagine David Beckham even eating donuts.
Yeah, you wouldn't think he would you?
That's
Too
why he was
healthy.
sharing them, doesn't touch them. Charlotte, thank you very much indeed. Let's have a look at what you need to know about watching the funeral tomorrow, because lots of people want to know exactly what the timings are going to be. The details have now been released. So the state funeral begins at exactly 11 o'clock in Westminster Abbey. That will be broadcast on TV, of course, on BBC One, on ITV and Sky, not just at 11 o'clock. Breakfast will be previewing it in the morning, and then there will be full coverage of the preparations as well. For those who want to be here in person, there will be special viewing places along the route of the funeral procession. That will be here in London and also in Windsor, because the public procession in London will be followed by that private service at Windsor Castle. In London, that procession will be between Westminster Abbey after the service and Wellington Arch, while the Windsor procession will travel along the Long Walk before going into the castle for that private ceremony. There will also be big screens up, and 125 cinemas around the UK will also be showing those services. So you can follow all these events and developments leading up to the funeral of Queen Elizabeth on the BBC News website and on the iPlayer, and that full interview with Camilla, Queen Consort, will be on BBC One tonight, just before the 2-minute silence, national silence, at 8 o'clock tonight. We'll be hearing from some people in the queue in a few minutes' time, but first let's return to Nina, who's in the studio. Hi, Nina.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to rejoining you soon. We've been meeting all of this week some of those who've been invited to the Queen's funeral. And among the dignitaries who have been invited, there will also be a number of people who met the Queen through their community work, including Cathy Cowell, the chair of Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust and Deputy Lieutenant of Cheshire. She joins me now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How and when did you find out?
Last Saturday by email.
Through email?
Yeah,
what did it say?
It just said the invitation came, and I emailed back and said I'd be honoured and privileged to be in Westminster Abbey.
And then presumably you got on the phone to share the news.
Actually, I didn't, because I needed to make sure it was absolutely all organised. I mean, I like things to be dotted, so then I did share the news. And of course, it's a huge honour to represent the NHS of Manchester in Westminster Abbey. And the Queen was such a huge supporter, wasn't she, of the NHS? And I don't think that was ever demonstrated more this year when she gave us the George Cross.
Absolutely.
So it'll be a huge honour to be
in
there.
the wake of COVID.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experiences of the Queen and the NHS.
So the Queen visited Royal Manchester Children's Hospital in 2017 in the wake of the Manchester Arena attack. And it was an amazing visit, because she brought with her that day a real sense of comfort, and it was a real morale boost for the patients, their families, staff and our volunteers. And it was a really terrible time, so she really lifted the morale of everybody that day.
I would imagine as well, 3 days after something so traumatic happening, the state that the children are in, the state that the staff are in, under a lot of pressure, very difficult. That's not an easy environment to walk into, is it, for her?
No, and she was truly amazing. On the morning of her visit, I did a quick whip around the ward to say, yeah, the Queen is coming. And we had one young lady, one young patient, and since she'd been admitted, she was really difficult to engage. You know, she was really withdrawn. So I went into her room and said, you know, the Queen is coming. Can I bring her in to see you? And we'd had no reaction from this young lady at all. And suddenly, you know, her eyes lit up and she said, the Queen? So I said, yeah, can I bring her in? And she said, yeah. So in the blink of an eye, she turned to her relative that was with her and said, quick, pass me my makeup bag. I need a clean lady. I need to do my hair. And this is a young girl who hadn't sat up since she'd been admitted. So that was the effect the Queen had on that young lady. And I then went across the corridor to the next ward. And by then the Bush Telegraph had beaten me to it, hadn't we? The ward was buzzing. They knew the Queen was coming. I was talking to one of the young girls and her mum was next to her. And her mum had been injured in the attack as well. And she said to me, but I've heard the Queen's coming at 12 o'clock. And I said, yeah, I think that's the timing. She said, but I'm going to theatre. If you tell them not to take me, they'll let me stay.
Theatre takes priority.
Oh, you definitely need to have your wounds dressed, so I'm sorry if they come for you, you need to go. So she accepted that, but when the Queen ran, we were on the ward and we got to this point, and as I drew the curtains back, of course her bed was empty and she'd gone to theatre, but her mum was there. So I turned to the Queen and said, Mum, yeah, she'll be so disappointed to have missed you. She so wanted to meet you. But this is her mum who was injured, and the Queen went on to talk to her mum. And I was on the ward a few days later, and this young girl, she was beside herself with joy. She'd had a personal letter from the Queen saying how disappointed she was not to meet her. And that was the difference the Queen made, the impact she had.
It just shows the extent to which she was listening as well. Yes. She wasn't just going through the motions.
Absolutely. And that was really apparent when she met our staff. So she didn't not only meet the staff from the hospital, but all those emergency services that had attended on the night. And what standing next to what was so apparent was she just asked a question and she listened so intently. And actually, it was almost a cathartic process for those people who talked to her that day. She was so very special that day. And you're right, it was so difficult to walk into. And we were told to keep it low-key. By the time,
how are you meant to do that, though?
Well, if you look at the footage from her leaving the hospital afterwards, the crowds were everywhere and she got a rounding cheer and that. But it was the difference she made.
How much of a difference does it make in a situation like that when presumably your staff have been working round the clock, your patients have been through a nasty trauma?
It's hard to remember back, but we'd never come across anything like this before in Manchester. And we suddenly realised the impact of having to take our patients to theatre several times, back and back to theatre. And the staff were really tired and it just lifted them and actually gave them the impetus. And she brought with her that strength and comfort and that she gave us the belief that you can carry on and do this.
Which is what she did for decades,
Absolutely.
Wasn't it? Finally, you wouldn't share the news until you'd prepared all the logistics. Have you got your outfit sorted? Have you got the train booked?
Everything. The hat, the gloves, everything. Quick phone call to a pal. Is it hats? Yes, it's hats. So got the hats, train booked, hotel booked, and everything ready to go.
And no +1s allowed, are they?
No,
so...
but I have an absolutely fabulous husband who hold the coat outside and wait for me.
Oh, bless him. And it will be a sombre occasion, but as you were saying earlier, it will be a cause to celebrate what was a life well lived.
Oh, a huge moment to reflect on that life well lived, but also to celebrate the difference the Queen made.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your memories. Amazing. Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you, Nina.
And enjoy tomorrow.
It'll be very, very special. A moment in history.
It will. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back with John and those waiting patiently in the queue throughout the morning. But for now, at 24 minutes past 7, let's check in with the day's other news. A man's being charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in central London on Friday. Mohammed Rahman was also charged with assaults and 2 counts of threatening a person with a blade. A female officer suffered a stab wound to the arm and has been discharged from hospital, while a male officer remains under medical supervision. Police have charged a man with a public order offence for allegedly leaving the queue of mourners to approach the Queen's coffin on Friday evening. The Metropolitan Police say Mohammed Khan will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Monday. He's the second person to be charged with committing an offence while in the queue to see the Queen lying in state. The UN's nuclear watchdog says Ukraine's huge Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has begun receiving power again from the national grid. The plant was seized by Russian forces within days of the war starting in February. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says investigations into possible Russian war crimes are continuing in the city of Izium following the discovery of mass graves. Well, our reporter Hugo Bechega joins us now from Kiev. Morning to you, Hugo. What more do we know about the investigations?
Morning, Nina. So the local authorities in Izium say that 59 bodies have now been recovered from this mass burial site. The majority of the bodies recovered are from civilians, but 17 bodies of Ukrainian soldiers have also been recovered. So it's a long process, a very difficult process for these investigators. The authorities say that more than 450 graves have been found there. We don't know yet how many people are there. We don't know how they died. But last night, President Zelensky said that the authorities have found new evidence that some of these people had been tortured. Also last night, the president said that more than 10 torture chambers have been found in other areas that had been liberated by the Ukrainian forces, areas that had been occupied by the Russians since the very beginning of the war. And prosecutors released pictures of a room where they say torture was being carried out. They also had a picture of a device that was being used to give electric shocks. Now, Russia has consistently denied that its forces committed atrocities in Ukraine. It's denied that Russian forces have attacked civilians, but authorities here in Ukraine say that this is evidence of war crimes committed by the Russians in occupied territories.
Hugo, with that update from Kiev, many thanks. It is 27 minutes past 7 and Sunday with Laura Koonsberg follows breakfast this morning. Morning to you, Laura. What can we expect today?
Good morning, Nina. Well, as you'd expect, we are going to be spending a lot of time this morning talking about that extraordinary event that we're all going to witness tomorrow, Her Late Majesty's state funeral. And we'll be talking to some of the people who've been involved in the planning of that over many years. The former Archbishop of York, John Sentamu, will be with me. The Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, who's been one of the people involved in all the pomp and ceremony this week. But we'll also be hearing from two of the world leaders who've flown into the UK to attend the state funeral. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern will be here live with us in the studio. And we've also been speaking to Bangladesh's Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, who's reflected on the role of the Commonwealth right across the world and the Queen's long relationship with so many world leaders. So a huge amount to talk about at what's an extraordinary moment for us all.
Be really interesting to get that global perspective. Laura, thank you. It's coming up to 7:30. Let's go back to join John in Westminster. He's with those waiting patiently in the queue. Morning, John.
Hey, Nina. I know a lot of people have been worried about waste with the queue, especially blankets potentially being thrown away. Well, let me reassure you, these are some of the blankets that have been given out to people to keep them warm overnight if they've been waiting in the cold. And when they get to this point at the end of the queue, just before they enter Westminster Hall, they leave them here. They're then going to be washed, and either they go back to the people who are starting their queue experience, they're taken around to the beginning of the queue or the end of the queue. We can't remember whether it's the beginning or the end. And then as for food, if people have still got sealed food, which they can't take inside the Palace of Westminster, then Scouts groups are here and they are collecting it from people, they're taking it away, and they're putting it into storage so that people can go to food banks or to homeless charities in London and can be passed on that way. So the authorities are saying everything's been thought about. They're trying to make sure that there is as much saved and passed on and shared as possibly can happen. But let's talk to some people who are in the queue and hopefully not too cold this morning. Good morning. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not too bad, surprisingly.
OK, surprisingly.
Well, I know we started at 9 o'clock and we met in the queue, obviously, like everybody else, and now we're here. So it's been really good.
Tell us about your medals.
My
medals.
Her Majesty on. Yeah, well, I used to be a police officer, 30 years in Hampshire Constabulary, so it means a lot to come here. I didn't think it would affect me as much as it has done, but I've actually been really upset all week, so yeah, this is the final part, so really pleased to be here.
And how are you feeling as you get to that final part, as you approach that moment?
It's very emotional. It is. You don't realise how it affects you, and yeah, I'm pleased we're here, really.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask you guys as well? Where have you come from?
Yes, Sarah and I have known each other a long time, come from Hampshire. And I came because my mother and I would have come together, but my mother died last year, so...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so... Very emotional.
Yeah, there's so many people who...
Triggered by it, yeah.
Got those kind of personal
Absolutely.
connections and want to share going back generations.
Absolutely, yeah.
How are you feeling, okay?
Yeah, bit choked up by it all.
Yeah, okay. We'll let you wait on. Thank you very much indeed. Can I chat to you as well? You're on BBC Breakfast.
Hello.
Hi,
Yeah, I'm Alan from Chesham in Buckinghamshire. So I only met Karen and
Sarah and Karen.
sorry, Karen's here.
I'm here.
Sarah's here.
12 hours. You've forgotten their names already.
I know. It's shocking. Yeah, there's no sleep. That's what that
I'm
is.
sure.
So,
how are you feeling? Are you okay?
I'm all right. Yeah, not too bad. So I thought it was important to come. Nobody else in my family was able to make it, and my mum especially would have liked to have been here. So I thought I'd come along and.
For the family?
Yeah, effectively, but I think it's the end of an era, so I think it was important to come. So.
Yeah. And can I ask you as well about Her Majesty and why you were motivated to come and remember the Queen?
I've always kind of followed the royal family, especially kind of, Diana and William and Harry, and say also the Queen as well. I've always kind of, read everything, actually watched all the TV programmes, and it really kind of did hit me. I was watching the TV on the Thursday and kind of listening to all the reports, and as soon as you kind of hear that there's an announcement from the palace, you know it's serious. And so I knew kind of what to expect, but it really did hit me, and I was quite upset. Yeah. So, and I'd been thinking about it on and off for the last couple of days. I did come up the day after on the Friday, lay some flowers at Buckingham Palace, and then obviously I came up on my own then, and then there was kind of nobody to come with me now, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go on my own.
So you've been on your own?
Yes.
But you've made new friends?
Exactly, yes, so Sarah, Caroline and Alan. Just kind of.
She got their names right. You have to swap addresses and keep in touch.
We've got a WhatsApp.
Yes,
group.
we've got.
You've got a WhatsApp group already.
It's exchanged photographs and everything. So.
Christmas together?
Oh, who knows? Who knows?
Lovely to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. Those medals are looking fantastic.
Good. Thank you very much.
You take care. Thank you.
John Kay.
Yeah, correct. You're on BBC Breakfast. How are you?
Very well. Very well. Very tired. What a great experience this has been.
Explain why you were motivated to come.
Do you know what? I've been thinking about this for a while. It's because the Queen has been with us, well, for my entire life, and you feel a connection with the Queen. And you just want to pay your respects.
Yeah.
That's all it is. We've walked miles and miles, hours and hours, but it's been great, hasn't it? It's been really great. I can't wait to get in there to see the Queen. I'm tired, but it's been a great experience.
Thank you for letting us stop you. Are your feet all right?
No, very sore.
Okay, well, hopefully...
Nice to see you.
Be in a bath within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So many people here waiting to go inside. Let me just talk you through what's going to happen in the hours ahead, because the coffin will remain inside Westminster Hall for the next, 24 hours time. It's going to be closed to the public. It'll be closing to the public at 6:30. So this is the fourth and final day of that. Tonight there will be a 1-minute silence is going to be held across the UK. That will be at exactly 8 o'clock, and people will be marking that either privately at home, on the street with neighbours, or community events, vigils. It will be full coverage here on the BBC. The Queen will hold an audience with Prime Minister Liz Truss at Buckingham Palace today. And the King and Queen Consort will also be meeting heads of state and some of the overseas official guests at the palace as well, who are gathering here. We've seen Joe Biden and his wife Jill arriving in the UK last night. They are already here. You okay? Somebody's dropped something. I thought somebody had fallen over, but we're all right. We're talking about Buckingham Palace. Helena Wilkinson is there outside the palace. And Helena, not as many crowds there at the moment, but that's going to be the focus of the King's Day, all those important meetings ahead.
Yes, another very busy day, John, for the King. Yes, it's pretty quiet here at the moment this morning. We have seen some people coming up to the gates at Buckingham Palace, quietly standing, others in groups taking photographs. We've seen a number of police officers move around behind us, so they're clearly getting ready for another day where they expect, once again, tens of thousands of people. And don't forget, here is where the crowds here have seen the King going in and out from Clarence House, so perhaps they might be hoping they will see the King a bit later on today. But the King has a number of formal events later. As you mentioned, he has an audience with the Prime Minister Liz Truss, and then later on the focus really will be here at Buckingham Palace. There will be that formal state reception at the funeral tomorrow. 2,000 guests, and of those 500 will be heads of state and also foreign dignitaries. So here at the Palace, the King will host that event reception later on today, and it will be the only opportunity really where all of those heads of states will be able to gather together. Now, we understand that they will pause diplomacy, pause politics due to that period of mourning. Those discussions will take place after the funeral. You've mentioned during the programme, of course, that the US President, Joe Biden, arrived here in the UK last night. We're just showing you the pictures there of Mr. Biden coming off Air Force One with his wife Jill. They arrived at Stansted Airport last night, and today President Biden is expected to sign an official book of condolence at Lancaster House, which is not too far away from where we are. Those who are attending the funeral tomorrow are also going to be given the opportunity, if they wish, to go to Westminster Hall to pay their respects, to see the Queen lying in state, and they will also, as we expect President Biden to do a bit later on, to sign that official book of condolence. So today, John, really is about all of those people from abroad, world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, dignitaries, also members of the royal families from Europe as well, who will be attending the Queen's funeral tomorrow. We will see them arriving here in London. Some, of course, have arrived already, but also here at the Palace, a lot of people will be coming in and out of the Palace, no doubt. The crowds will again be building a bit later on here this morning, expecting tens of thousands of people. And in fact, there are some people, John, already camping not too far from the Palace. The devoted, dedicated royal supporters, they want to be here for Monday, and they have tried to get the best space that they can, because again, this will be one of the focus points tomorrow. So again, expecting lots of people here a bit later on.
Indeed. Helena at Buckingham Palace, thank you very much indeed. Just like those civil dignitaries and heads of state who are gathering at the Palace have come from all over the world. People here in the queue as well from all over the globe who've descended on London. Some people have travelled thousands and thousands of miles to wait in line overnight and to go into Westminster Hall to pay their respects. The people we're with here are just a few minutes now from getting to that point, entering the hall, and you can feel the mood is very sombre as people await. Shall we just have a chat? Hello there, good morning. Hello. From BBC Breakfast, you're live on TV.
Oh, hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. We were just trying to find out from people why they wanted to be here this morning. What's motivated you?
Oh, it's just amazing. Just had to come and say our goodbyes.
Yeah, and it's history, isn't it? We're never going to see it again.
It's just a memory made for life.
Yeah. How's it been overnight? You must have been
hard going. It was 11 hours.
Yeah,
just over 11 hours.
It was 2 hours. It would come to it the standstill.
Yeah,
and that he hit a brick wall
for the funeral.
That was really hard.
But it's been. I forgot that now. Now we're here.
Got a second wind, and
you're almost there.
It hits you now.
Tell people at home, what's the atmosphere like as you prepare to enter the hall now?
It changes. The mood changes.
Yeah.
You get very emotional, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting a bit of. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, you take care.
Thank you.
Look after yourselves. We've got lots of amazing stories. Hello there. Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Just tell us where you're from and why you've come.
We're from Wandsworth.
Okay.
Not very far, but we've started about 8:30 last night, and it was
we've gone
fine.
all the way through the night. We were at a standstill for about 2.5 hours at the British Film Institute. So,
Yeah. But otherwise, it's
You're
been great.
almost there now.
Yes.
And what
yes.
was it that motivated? What was it about the Queen Elizabeth II?
Yes,
that
for sure.
You wanted to be here?
I think we wanted to say thank you to her for being such a great queen, and for serving us, and being there for such a long time. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you for joining us. It's interesting, there's quite a lot of younger people here, like a lot of children who've waited through the night as well. There's one of them carrying a sleeping bag. But we've got the story now of a little girl in Southampton called Lois, and she was shocked, really, to get a letter through the post the day after the Queen died from Her Majesty, thanking her, Lois, for a letter that Lois had sent to the Queen. James Ingham had been to meet her and her family.
The Platinum Jubilee, a moment of special celebration for many this summer, including one young girl who really loved the Queen.
All her years of reign, she's done so many things for all of us. So I sent a poem. You shine oh so bright, like the stars in the night. Happy Jubilee, I hope you have a nice cup of tea. The Jubilee will be history, and looking back, you'll what they'll see. Happy Jubilee.
I said, well, do you know what? It might be a nice idea to send it to the Queen. She might see it, you never know. And just sort of forgot about it.
Until last Friday, when some post arrived.
I got a letter from Buckingham Palace. Then I opened it and I was just surprised. I was speechless. I send you my grateful thanks for your kind message on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of my accession to the throne, Elizabeth R.
You were really excited to get something from the Queen, weren't you? I've always been a big royalist, and so to have the Queen pass away one day and then the next day get a card from her, I'm happy and sad at the same time, I suppose.
Happy that I got a piece of history, and a bit sad that, well, the Queen died. She lived a long, happy life. We might as well celebrate it.
No other cards will have gone out from the Queen as of Thursday, so yeah, we've got a piece of history there, and it will be treasured forever.
I bet it will be. Thank you to Lois and her family for sharing their story with us. Lots more stories. Everybody here in the queue has a story. Good morning to you, sir. Tell us where you've come from.
I've come from North Wales.
Proudly wearing your medals there.
I am, yeah.
What's your connection to Her Majesty then?
So I serve with the Army Reserves. I'm in Field Hospital. I work for the NHS as well. I'm a doctor, and I think like everyone here, the Queen meant quite a lot to me personally. I think she represented us all, whatever your background, wherever you came from, whatever your race or your religion. She was there as a constant who represented us all. So felt I needed to come and pay my respects.
Well said, beautifully said. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
No, thank you.
I say everybody's got a story. Good morning to you. Hello, BBC News.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
We're fine.
How's it been overnight?
Oh, it's been challenging.
Yeah?
But it's worth it.
What have the challenges been?
The wait to stand in. That's what it's been. But it's all in a good cause.
Yeah, you feel it's worth it. You're almost there now.
Almost there, yeah.
And just tell us, why was it so important for you to put yourselves through that? Why did you want to be here? Can I ask you as well?
Well, because the Queen is probably going to be the last Queen I'm ever going to see in my lifetime. So I feel like I should pay my last respects to her before I never see another Queen again.
And how special has it been in this queue?
Well, the Queen, she's been a constant in my life. As soon as I was born, the Queen's always been there. So it's kind of like strange to think that someone you think, even though she's old, that she would never die, is now gone. So yeah.
Okay. You're almost there.
Yeah.
You're almost there. There's somebody in a pushchair there as well. Well done, you. How's that been?
It's been good.
Good? Really? Hard work. She slept.
She slept for 8
Hello.
hours.
Good morning. How are you feeling? Good. You feeling good? The iPad. How do you keep a charge on your iPad overnight? That's pretty impressive.
She's only had it for half an hour.
You held it in reserve.
Yes.
You feeling all right?
Yeah, all good, all good. Yeah, she slept for 8 hours. That was, she did well.
You did very well, 8 hours.
Yeah,
Fresh.
because of in here.
Because you've been here, fresh air, fresh as a daisy this morning.
Yeah, and this got turned into a bed.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the rest of the family are, but thank you very much indeed. Nice stretch. Thank you very much indeed. It's amazing what people have been prepared to put themselves through for this. Hello, good morning. Hello. You look like you want to talk to us.
I was going to I served in the Air Force.
I can see your medals as well with the Queen on, yeah.
So I went to Afghanistan, but I did 9 years in the Air Force. I'm here to pay my respect to my boss, and pretty much that's it.
Your boss?
My boss.
Is that what it feels like?
Yes.
You've come to say goodbye to the boss?
Yes.
Yeah. How are you feeling as you approach the final?
Yeah, getting there.
Yeah.
Slowly, emotions coming out now, I think.
Yeah.
So,
it's an emotional time, right?
it is.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Thank you, thank you. I don't think I've ever known an experience like this as a reporter where literally everybody wants to talk to you. Sometimes you put a camera in people's faces in any kind of crowd and there's a reluctance or a shyness, but here literally everybody has been happy to talk to us. I've tempted fate now, haven't I? I know that the next person I try and talk to won't want to talk to us at all. We'll try and talk to some people later. But what we wanted to do as well this morning is talk about the situation in Northern Ireland, the fact that the Queen has played an important role in the peace process over the last few years, communicating in different ways with different communities in Northern Ireland. It's something that our correspondent there, Chris Page, has been looking at.
In Northern Ireland, castles are a backdrop for condolences. The fresh flowers have brought back old memories of the Queen's trips across the Irish Sea.
Carrickfergus Castle looked out on a very wet scene as the royal barge brought the Queen to the jetty. The step was too high.
Some of the most precious recollections are of people meeting the late monarch.
I was so nervous, you know, and to think that I was going to meet the greatest person ever in my life, and went forward then to the wee platform, and you know, you did your curtsy, and then you're looking under these two beautiful blue eyes looking at you, and the smile.
Just 3 months ago, residents of the Fountain Estate in Londonderry held a party for the Platinum Jubilee. The picture of Her Majesty, which they made for that occasion, now has a black ribbon attached as people prepare themselves for her funeral.
I want to sit there and cry and you know, just really drink in every single second, as we have been doing. I mean, everybody at the minute here in this club, the minute they come in, the TV, and they're sitting glued, and you know, you find an hour passes, 2 hour passes, and you could just sit there all day.
It's almost 70 years since cameras captured this in Northern Ireland's capital. Thousands greeted the sovereign with joy during her coronation tour. But on the day of the funeral, this will be a place of sorrow rather than celebration. People will gather to watch proceedings in London and Windsor in front of a grand building which Queen Elizabeth II knew so well. Members of the Irish nationalist community ultimately want Northern Ireland to leave the United Kingdom. In these areas, fewer businesses are likely to close tomorrow. But while people don't feel connected to the monarchy, there's a recognition the Queen worked to heal a divided society.
There was a huge degree of respect for Queen Elizabeth, and people were very anxious to express their regrets and their condolences to King Charles. And there was a degree of warmth there, which might not necessarily have been present in the past.
And for those who cherish their unionist identity, the Queen was the prime symbol of Britishness. That sentiment is strong on the Shankill Road in Belfast.
That'll be a sad, sad day for such a lovely lady. She have served our country well.
Total honour. We take our hats off if we were wearing one for the years that she's given us, and we hope we can give something back for the future king.
The Queen was revered by Unionists and most often respected by nationalists. They'll both be contemplating her legacy as she's laid to rest. Chris Page, BBC News.
The sun has risen here in London, which is giving us a bit of much needed warmth, especially for these people who've queued through the night. We're being told that the queue is now 13.5 hours long, so we're expecting some news over the next few hours about exactly how the authorities are going to manage it, because of course at 6:30 tomorrow Westminster Hall will close to the public, and we need to make sure that everybody who can get in there by that point, and people aren't going to be waiting, hopefully needlessly, overnight. With that sun giving us some warmth this morning, let's see how much sunshine there is going to be across the UK for everybody today. Chris has the weather for us. Morning, Chris.
Hello there. The weather today for many of you is looking dry, but there is more cloud around than we had yesterday. The best of any sunshine across parts of southern Wales and southwest England. The cloud today will be thick enough for a few passing showers across parts of northwest England, across northern Scotland and around some eastern areas of England, particularly near the North Sea coast. But away from these areas, the weather should stay dry and temperatures about 17 or 18 degrees Celsius for a high today. Now for the Queen's lying in state, again, the weather is going to be dry today, but there will be more in the way of cloud, temperatures about 17 degrees. And for the state funeral tomorrow, again, it's looking dry. There will be occasional brighter spells. Overnight tonight, showers will continue across eastern areas of England for a time, and then later in the night we'll see some thicker cloud working in to the northwest of the UK, bringing a few splashes of light patchy rain. Where the clouds break, we'll see temperatures dipping down into single figures, so for a few areas it will be a chilly start to the day tomorrow. Again, quite a bit of cloud around, fair amount of dry weather, some bright or sunny spells, but across the northwest the cloud will be thickest and we'll have a few areas of light rain from time to time. It does turn slightly warmer, temperatures tomorrow reaching a high of 19.
Thank you, Chris. It's just gone 10 to 8. We'll have more from John and the team in London a little bit later on, but let's have a look at the day's other news. A man has been charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in central London on Friday. Mohammed Rahman was also charged with assault and 2 counts of threatening a person with a blade. A female officer suffered a stab wound to the arm and has been discharged from hospital, while a male officer remains under medical supervision. Police and community leaders are calling for calm after large numbers of people became involved in disorder in parts of East Leicester. This footage online shows hundreds of people, mainly men, filling the streets on Saturday evening. It's the latest in a series of disturbances which started after an India and Pakistan cricket match last month. Hundreds of thousands of people in Japan have been urged to evacuate their homes following warnings of unprecedented risks from an approaching storm. Winds could reach 168 miles per hour and some areas could experience 20 inches of rainfall in just 24 hours. A typhoon warning is in place for Kyushu. That's the southernmost of the 4 main islands of Japan. On to sport now. Manchester City have moved to the top of the Premier League, beating Wolves 3-0, while a stunning hat-trick from Son Heung-min saw Tottenham beat Leicester 6-2. Those games, like hundreds across the country, saw supporters and players pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. Joe Linsky reports.
Across football, the tributes continued, first in silence, then in song. Three top-flight games went on yesterday at Spurs. The England captain stood and sung. Minutes later, he scored. For Leicester, made it 2-2. Still, though, the Foxes haven't won this season, and Wolves still on 70 minutes. They stopped.
In the Premier League's other match yesterday, it finished 1 each between Newcastle and Bournemouth. The visitors took the lead in the second half at St James's through Phil Billing. But Newcastle were awarded a penalty after Jefferson Lerma handled in the box. Club record signing Alexander Isak scored from the spot to rescue a point. Celtic will restore their 5-point lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership if they win at St Mirren this lunchtime. Rangers cut the gap to 2 points thanks to a 2-1 win over Dundee United at Ibrox. Antonio Cholak scored both goals as he ended their 3-match losing streak. There were also wins for Hibernian and Livingston, while St Johnstone drew with Ross County. There are 4 games to come in the opening weekend of the Women's Super League today, with champions Chelsea travelling to newly promoted Liverpool this evening. Manchester United beat Reading 4-0 yesterday, with England's Alessio Russo on the score sheet. And Aston Villa host Manchester City at 12:30 live on BBC Two and on the iPlayer. St Helens will meet Leeds at Old Trafford in the Super League Grand Final next weekend after beating Salford City Reds. Salford had fought back in the second half to get within a point of Saints, but Joe Bennison scored a late try to make it certain. It finished 19-12 to St Helens, who were looking for their 4th consecutive title. Saracens came from behind to beat Harlequins 30-17 in the Rugby Union Premiership. Harlequins were leading 17-0 midway through the first half before Elliot Daly started the fight back with Saracens' first try and then secured the win with a penalty. Elsewhere, there were wins for Northampton, Leicester, Bristol and Sale. Now we return to reflections on Her Majesty the Queen, and over her life she made so many visits to towns and cities up and down the UK. There were throngs of people always hoping to meet or catch a glimpse of the Queen. One of those trips was for an unveiling in the seaside town of Morecambe in Lancashire. And our North of England correspondent Judith Moritz has been speaking to those who met the Queen that special day.
If I had the opportunity to escort the Queen around Morecambe for her royal visit, I would want to show Morecambe in the best view possible. From here, there is a view overlooking the lakes, Grange and Cumbria. The first place I would love the Queen to picture.
As a teenager, Anna Harper wrote this essay about showing her hometown to the Queen. It was for a competition to meet the monarch when she visited Morecambe in 1999, and Anna won.
I wish she had an ice cream on the prom. I don't think she did, but I would have liked her to. I still can't believe it. I still sometimes look at the picture and think, oh gosh, that was me. And that's the Queen. For her to come here where I was, and my special place where I grew up, it's just magical, magical.
The Queen was in town to unveil the statue of its most famous son, Eric Morecambe, who'd taken his stage name from the resort. The statue was built after a campaign by the local newspaper, which printed a special edition. But that wasn't the only media coverage.
Now, he's one of Britain's best-loved comedians, and today he received the Royal Seal of Approval as the Queen unveiled a...
I think we would have got the statue on, regional news programmes quite comfortably in its own right. But the fact that the Queen was here, that elevated it to, I think it was one of the lead items on national news that day. And that certainly raised the profile of the town.
Morecambe and Wise met the Queen several times, here at a film premiere in 1973, and then 3 years later when she awarded them the OBE.
She seemed very at ease to be unveiling a comedian, which is very strange, and I like to think that shows her respect for Morecambe and Wise.
Eric Morecambe's son, Gary, says the relationship between the monarch and the comic duo was a strong one.
The Queen was a great Morecambe and Wise fan, actually. I think the whole family was, the whole royal family. Yeah, they used to tune into the shows, and apparently on Christmas Day, the lunch was built around the show starting. So they had to have their meal in time to watch the show, which I always thought was really wonderful. I think that's a lovely thought.
The royal visit is still remembered fondly in Morecambe as the day when the Queen came to pay homage to the King of Comedy.
Well, I was staggered when I heard the Queen was going to unveil it. So then you started thinking, yeah, this is real. She's really going to show up. And she did. She did, in all her magnificence.
Hello there, good morning. Sunday morning, welcome to breakfast from BBC News with me, John Kay, live in Westminster, and Nina is in the studio. Here are your headlines at 8 o'clock this Sunday morning. And the Queen's consort has been paying tribute to Queen Elizabeth II.
She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, you know, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. You know, that smile is unforgettable.
Well, thousands continue to pay their respects as the Queen's body lies in state here for another 24 hours. Tomorrow's funeral will be shown on big screens and in cinemas across the UK. The US President Joe Biden has arrived in the UK ahead of the Queen's funeral. He will be meeting King Charles along with other world leaders at Buckingham Palace a little later.
And away from Westminster, today's other headlines. A man's been charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in London's Leicester Square.
Good morning, everybody. Sunday, the 18th of September. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. We're outside Westminster Hall, the Palace of Westminster, as thousands of people process inside to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II. These people have been waiting for hours, 12, 13, 14 hours through the cold and through the dark overnight, and more are arriving and joining the queue every moment. The public paying their respects, but we also have a statement that's been recorded by Queen Consort Camilla. She's recorded a televised statement making her own very personal tribute to the Queen, her mother-in-law, praising Elizabeth II for carving out her own role in a male-dominated world. And we can hear a clip from that interview right now.
She has been part of our lives forever. I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there. It must have been so difficult for her being a solitary woman. There weren't women prime ministers or women presidents. She was the only one, so I think she carved her own role. She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, you know, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. You know, that smile is unforgettable.
It doesn't matter who you are, royal family or any family, those comments about the glint in the eye, that smile of the Queen, are exactly the same comments that you get when you talk to people in the crowd, as well as there from Queen Consort Camilla. That crowd is moving quickly, isn't it? That's a shot from above looking down onto it. These people just approaching the Palace of Westminster, so they'll be inside the hall, able to pay their respects in the next 20 minutes or half an hour or so. They've waited right through the night. We understand the queue is currently about 12 or 13 hours long, and this being Sunday and this being pretty decent weather ahead, we're expecting the queue to get longer and longer, and it means that the authorities are going to have to make a decision and make public that decision in the next few hours about how long the queue will remain open, because Westminster Hall will close to the public at 6:30 tomorrow morning ahead of the funeral. But ahead of that funeral, world leaders have been arriving in the UK to take part. The US President Joe Biden and his wife Jill, they flew into the UK last night. And Duncan Kennedy has been looking at those high-profile arrivals and the regular people who also want to be here.
Two countries united by one grief. President Biden landing last night at Stansted with the First Lady ahead of tomorrow's funeral. He's one of around 500 heads of state and dignitaries taking part. From presidents who cross oceans to people who line rivers, Mr. Biden arrives in a capital whose centre has been transformed.
Keep on going, guys, keep on going.
At its heart, a queue whose length is measured in hours, not yards. Some even have proof.
I've been here for 8 hours and 14 seconds, 14 minutes. That's how long I've been here for.
At times, the queue has been 10 miles long. For some, the walking brings weariness and a need to loosen the limbs. Not far behind them, someone honoured by the Queen, who knows all about pace and perseverance.
In my head, it was like, I have to join this queue, so I stopped all my plans for the weekend, got on the train this morning, met some friends to change my clothes, and here I am.
The queue's tempo has varied, but has consistently remained patient and determined. To many here, the Queen is not a, but the national treasure.
She's given us so much. She's given us her whole life. And I just rang Mum and I said, I think we just need to go.
What does she mean to you, the Queen?
I think quite a lot, because obviously we've all grown up with her being obviously our Queen, and she's had such an impact on all our lives. I think she means quite a lot to all of us.
I was a guardsman myself, working outside Buckingham Palace and the Tower in Windsor Castle. I feel quite a close affinity with the royal family. Especially the Queen. I've met her on occasions, and I just think it's my duty to come down and show my respects.
When this queue does finally close and the last person files past the Queen's coffin sometime early tomorrow morning, it'll mark the end of an unprecedented act of collective tribute. Attention will then move from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for the funeral. Last night, inside Westminster Hall, standing sentinel to their beloved grandmother, the Queen's 8 grandchildren, posted to all sides of the plinth. A symmetrical display of her extended family's devotion. Flowing around them, those who've come to pay respects to a long royal life, bookended by coronation and commemoration. Westminster Hall carrying the solemnity of a cathedral amid the silence of a library.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
At Buckingham Palace, King Charles has been meeting some of the Commonwealth leaders who've arrived for the funeral. They included the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He's previously declared himself a Republican, but said such matters were for another time. At Windsor Castle, they've been moving tens of thousands of flowers from well-wishers inside the castle grounds, ready for the burial ceremony, with the blooms all facing towards Her Majesty's beloved home. Tonight at 8 p.m, the country will hold a national moment of reflection for 1 minute, to stop and think about the life and legacy of the Queen. It comes ahead of tomorrow's funeral, a momentous occasion of state, a family farewell, and a full stop moment in this nation's history. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Well, here we are just after 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. The sun is out. It looks like it's going to be a rather lovely day here. It's warming up the crowds who've been in the cold and in the darkness through the last 12, 13 hours or so, and of course those many thousands more who are joining every hour at the back of the queue, 7 or 8 miles away, who have got hours and hours to go before they get to this point. And everybody thinking about today, but also looking ahead to tomorrow. And we know that more than 1,000 sailors and Royal Marines will be preparing to take part in the Queen's funeral tomorrow, pulling the state ceremonial gun carriage bearing the Queen's coffin, taking it from Westminster Hall here to Westminster Abbey at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for the funeral. And we're joined here on breakfast today by Admiral Sir Ben Key, who's the First Sea Lord and Chief of Naval Staff. Thank you so much for joining us.
John, good morning. It's a privilege.
We know that this is a huge privilege for your team, for your sailors and Royal Navy personnel. Just talk us through what it is that they will be doing, because they're going to be right at the front of this procession tomorrow.
So, yes, right at the heart of the procession are the sailors who are pulling the gun carriage. As you said, a tradition that goes back to the funeral of Queen Victoria, where they stepped in at the last minute, and it's a duty that we've cherished ever since. But actually, there are many others who are up here in London supporting. There are marching contingents, the vans of the Royal Marine Band Service, Royal Marines themselves, streetliners, and then we've got many hundreds of sailors also working as stewards, assisting the general organisation of the day. But it's not just those who are here in London or the 1,000 or so service personnel in Windsor. Actually, across the country, there are other people supporting, because for every person that's come to London or to Windsor to put on a uniform and take part, that actually means that that's a sailor, a soldier, an aviator who has to take their duty, whether that's up in Scotland in the barracks, that could be an air station in the Midlands, or for us, you know, the naval bases on the south coast. So it is an extraordinary coming together of the UK Armed Forces, our civil servants and support contractors to play our part in this national and global moment.
We're seeing pictures here of some of the rehearsals that have been taking place over the last couple of days. For those sailors who are involved in the procession of the coffin itself that we'll see tomorrow, it's a really complicated job, isn't it, that they have to do to get it absolutely perfect. Just talk us through the manoeuvring.
So, as you can see, there's a huge amount of rehearsal required. It's not light, it's quite a heavy affair, and the people that are marching behind the coffin, in fact, are the brakes. So that attention has to be maintained the whole time on the gun carriage so that it moves at the requisite pace, balanced between momentum, and the streets of London are not all flat. You know, there's cobble, there's sand as you go across Horse Guards Parade, and then the final haul up Constitution Hill, actually it takes a huge amount of skill and personal fitness. But having met those that are involved, whether they've been in the service just a few months, for the youngest people there, or coming towards the end of many decades of service, they all share that same sense of deep personal pride and an absolute commitment that this final mark of respect that we, the Armed Forces, are making for Her late Majesty goes as perfectly. Oh, well, it will go perfectly. You know, no one wants to let the side down. And that applies to all of us. I mean, we've all, you know, myself and my fellow service chiefs have been rehearsing in the middle of the night as well. There's no fear or favour on rank when it comes to getting these things correct.
And you took part with some of those service chiefs in one of the vigils, didn't you, inside the hall around the coffin? That must have been quite some moment.
It was a remarkable privilege to go and join that moment. And for us to reflect ourselves on our own connections with the Queen. We all had the privilege of knowing her. I myself was fortunate to command HMS Lancaster, the Queen's frigate. So for many years, through many years, I've met her. And we have, you know, as has been reported so many times, she was the most natural person to meet. But she was well informed, she was engaged, she was interested, she was interesting. And she kept us to account as well, because as she has reflected, I think, on more than one occasion, as the daughter, the wife and mother of naval officers, she knew what naval life was about. And both in acknowledging the service of the sailors and the Marines who go to sea and around the world, she also wanted to make sure that their families, our families, were being looked after. She understood separation, times at sea, and she understood also the pressures that naval life can bring, and she wanted to just acknowledge all of us in the naval community, as well as across her armed forces as a whole, for the contribution that we make.
So when you were there standing right next to the coffin as part of that vigil, I guess those are some of the thoughts that you were having, those kind of things that were going through your head.
I was privileged enough to have an audience with Her Majesty in May. We talked about many things. But one of the things we reflected upon then was that her father and my grandfather fought alongside each other in HMS Collingwood at the Battle of Jutland. And it was a bond that stayed with them through the rest of their respective lives. And I think what we were just reflecting upon was that sense of service and the fact that this is shared from royalty to commoner. And I found myself thinking, here I am standing just a few feet away from someone who was a global figure, but also a very human person, and was grateful for what she did for us.
And you've spent time in the last couple of days with His Majesty King Charles as well.
Yes, I mean, how he found time to see his service chiefs, I don't know, in amongst all the pressures upon his timetable, but we had the privilege of an audience with him yesterday. He was engaged, he was engaging. He also took trouble to find out what else we were doing on military operations around the world. I mean, the lens is understandably focusing in on London, but service personnel deployed globally, still engaged in security operations. From Ukraine would be an obvious one, but we maintain the independent nuclear deterrent submarine remains on patrol. None of that stops, and we took an opportunity to talk about those things, and also clearly to mark our condolences to him and his family. And it was a chance for us to just commit ourselves, without, you know, sort of fanfare or an oath, to serving him in the way that we served his late mother.
You alluded to it there. I mean, the fact that he's having to have all these meetings, he's meeting presidents and prime ministers from all over the world today at Buckingham Palace, hosting the world really in London, isn't he? And yet also grieving as a son. I mean, how did he seem up close when you saw him?
Well, there was a mix of sadness and sparkle, depending upon where the conversation took us. I think we're all capable of, you know, we've all experienced our own moments of grief, and we are capable of smiling in amidst them. But I think I just come away with huge respect for what the royal family are going through at the moment. I think we would all find it very difficult to grieve in such a public manner. I hope after tomorrow is over, they will no doubt have times to reflect privately amongst themselves. But my admiration for His Majesty the King remains as high as it always has. Actually, he's been a great supporter of us all, and no doubt will continue to be so.
Admiral Sir Ben Key, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good luck with your final rehearsals today.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much indeed. These people waiting for the final few moments before they get inside Westminster Hall. And of course, we're talking a lot this morning about what we can expect from that funeral service tomorrow. And our religion editor, Aline McBool, has been speaking to some of those involved.
Throughout her reign, in good times and bad, the Queen drew heavily from her faith to guide her. And this little church on the edges of the Balmoral estate was a place she held dear. She came to services at Crathy Kirk all her life with very little ceremony, though there was a royal seat on a royal pew where she always sat.
The Queen was a very regular churchgoer. If she was here, almost always would come to church.
For 15 years, Ken Mackenzie was domestic chaplain to the Queen. He'll be among those at Windsor for her final service.
Some of the moments I would cherish most would be moments when the Queen would speak to me as a parish minister. I remember being over there one evening. So I asked her what her favourite hymn was. She said to me that her fondest memory ever of a Christian song was her father singing to her at her bedside as she was going to bed.
The hymn she remembered her father singing was based on the parable of the sheep lost in open country. Although the road be rough and steep, I go to the desert to find my sheep. Lord Sentamu, former Archbishop of York, is one of a small team that came up with the original order of service for the Queen's funeral. He says her knowledge of Scripture was remarkable.
She knows the Psalms by heart and can recite them. So you can be in a conversation. One time, you know, she was going through quite a trying period. We've been talking, and suddenly, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Whence cometh my help? My help cometh from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And you knew, whatever difficulty she's going through, her anchor is in God.
And it was that anchor of her faith that once led the Queen to say this.
As dark as death can be, particularly for those suffering with grief, light and life are greater.
Aline McBool, BBC News.
8:20 this Sunday morning, and the Union flag at half-mast above the Palace of Westminster here in central London. Right now, this building is the focus of the world's attention. This is Westminster Hall, where people continue to process through to pay their respects to the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II. People who've queued all night for mile after mile and who are finally now inside. That moment of peace and tranquility and reverence inside after hours of chatting and waiting with fellow queuers. Well, our reporter Charlotte Gallagher is here with us and has spent several days now queue watching, haven't you? It's interesting, it seems to be moving quite quickly this morning. The authorities seem to be keen to get people through because they know that come 6:30 tomorrow morning, that's it.
Yes, and we've seen with other events during this time that when they say something will stop or start at a certain time, it does. It's done on military precision. So 6:30 a.m. lying in state finishes tomorrow morning. So at some point today, the government will have to make a call about this queue, when to stop people joining the queue, because the last thing they want is people queuing potentially for 14 hours, getting to the front here and then being told they can't go in and see the Queen lying in state, because that would obviously be devastating for people who've spent hours and hours in that queue. So they will have to make that call. If you are thinking of coming down, there's still time to join the queue, but we're expecting this afternoon or this evening they will close it and you will no longer be able to join it. So if you do want to see the Queen lying in state, it's best to come down sooner rather than later.
And we should stress that the accessible queue for people with mobility issues, that closed permanently yesterday, didn't it?
Yes, that runs slightly differently.
Yeah.
People get a time slot, and there was a lot of disappointed people saying, I wanted to come down and I didn't have a chance because it closed earlier than I expected. So a lot of upset people who can't stand for 14 hours in a queue, very disappointed that they've not been able to see the Queen lying in state. But decisions have to be made about these queues and when they're going to stop. Lots and lots of people have seen the Queen now. Thousands have filed past us every day, and it's been amazing talking to people, hearing people's stories. I met one woman, her brother was in the army and he'd actually recently died, and she brought his urn with her because she wanted to bring him with her because she felt it would be something he would want to go to. Another family, they'd set off from Wales at 2 o'clock in the morning, got here, they'd brought a photo of their grandma because they knew that she would want to be here if she could. Lots of people queuing, not just for themselves, but for other people that are no longer here.
Representing their families or their friends or their neighbours or their work colleagues. Charlotte, for now, thank you very much indeed. There's a lot of people just at this final bit before they go inside Westminster Hall. Obviously they can't take food inside, so if you've got sealed food, you're asked to put it into a separate file, sort of bin area, some bags, and that food is going to be distributed to food banks and to charities for homeless people across London. So there's a real sense here that there should be no waste, that things are recycled along with the blankets as well, that it all gets well used. If you're watching this morning and you're thinking about tomorrow, the day of the funeral, or wondering how and when and where you're going to watch it, this is the information you need to know, because the funeral itself starts at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning in Westminster Abbey, and that's going to be broadcast on TV everywhere. It is, of course, on BBC One as well as on ITV and Sky. But if you're wanting to be here in person, there will be special viewing places along the route of the funeral procession in London and in Windsor. Now, in London, the public procession will be between Westminster Abbey following the service, that'll be about 12 noon, and Wellington Arch, so people can gather between those two spots. While the Windsor procession later in the afternoon tomorrow will travel along the Long Walk before then going into the castle grounds. That's where a private service will take place. But it's high tech as well across the UK. There'll be big screens up in different areas. I think there's some in Hyde Park I saw signs up for earlier, but in places across the country some big screens going up, and 125 cinemas are also showing services around the UK. If you look on the BBC News website or on the app, you can see more information local to where you are this morning, all the events and developments leading up to the funeral of Queen Elizabeth on BBC News website and iPlayer. And of course, BBC Breakfast will be here for you tomorrow morning ahead of the funeral with all the final preparations and everything you need to know for the day ahead, and also hearing your stories as well. This is your programme, and we're keen to reflect your stories and your connection to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. One thing that is very much on the minds of people here waiting, especially at the back of the queue, is the weather. How is it going to look today and even into tonight for those people who are prepared to wait that long? Chris has the weather for all of us this morning. Hi, Chris.
Hello there. The weather today for many of you is looking dry, but there is more cloud around than we had yesterday. The best of any sunshine across parts of southern Wales and southwest England. The cloud today will be thick enough for a few passing showers across parts of northwest England, across northern Scotland and around some eastern areas of England, particularly near the North Sea coast. But away from these areas, the weather should stay dry and temperatures about 17 or 18 degrees Celsius for a high today. Now for the Queen's lying in state. Again, the weather's going to be dry today, but there will be more in the way of cloud, temperatures about 17 degrees. And for the state funeral tomorrow, again, it's looking dry. There will be occasional brighter spells. Overnight tonight, showers will continue across eastern areas of England for a time, and then later in the night we'll see some thicker cloud working in to the northwest of the UK, bringing a few splashes of light patchy rain. Where the clouds break, we'll see temperatures dipping down into single figures. So for a few areas, it will be a chilly start to the day tomorrow. Again, quite a bit of cloud around, fair amount of dry weather, some bright or sunny spells. But across the northwest, the cloud will be thickest and we'll have a few areas of light rain from time to time. It does turn slightly warmer, temperatures tomorrow reaching a high of 19.
Thank you, Chris. Clear run then for tomorrow. Fingers crossed. We'll be back with John and the team in London a little bit later on. But coming up to 8:30, let's take a look at the day's other news. A man has been charged with attempted murder after 2 police officers were stabbed in central London on Friday. Mohammed Rahman was also charged with assaults and 2 counts of threatening a person with a blade. A female officer suffered a stab wound to the arm and has been discharged from hospital, while a male officer remains under medical supervision. Police and community leaders are calling for calm after a large number of people became involved in disorder in parts of East Leicester. Footage online shows hundreds of people, mainly men, filling the streets on Saturday evening. It's the latest in a series of disturbances which started after an India and Pakistan cricket match last month. The UN's nuclear watchdog says Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia plant is receiving power again from the national grid. The site was seized by Russian forces within days of the invasion in February. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says investigations into possible Russian war crimes are continuing in the city of Izium following the discovery of mass graves. Our correspondent Hugo Bachega joins us now. Morning to you, Hugo. This will be a long and painstaking process. What more do we know today?
Yeah, Nina, good morning. So authorities have recovered 59 bodies from this mass burial site that's been found outside the city of Izium. They say most of the bodies are from civilians. They also say 17 of the bodies are of Ukrainian soldiers. These bodies have been found in one mass grave, but it is going to be a very long process. They say 450 graves have been found in this forest, and one by one they are recovering those bodies to identify the victims and establish what happened to them. We don't know how they died, but last night President Zelensky said that there is new evidence that many of those people were tortured, but he didn't give details. He also said that as authorities return to those liberated towns and villages in the northeast of the country, in the Kharkiv region, they are finding evidence of torture chambers, in his words. More than 10 of these places have been found, and prosecutors in one town released images of a place that they said was being used as a torture center, and they released a picture of the device that was being used to give electric shocks. Now, Russia has denied that it has committed atrocities, crimes in this country, but the authorities here in Ukraine are treating these the evidence that they've been finding as evidence of war crimes that have been committed by the Russians in occupied territories.
You go with that update from Kiev. Thank you. Hundreds of thousands of people in Japan have been urged to evacuate their homes following warnings of an unprecedented risk from an approaching storm. Winds could reach 168 miles an hour, and some areas could experience 20 inches of rainfall in just 24 hours. A typhoon warning is in place for Kyushu. That's the southernmost of the 4 main islands of Japan. I'll be back with more news and sports soon, but let's go back to John in Westminster. Morning, John. We've heard from the head of the Navy this morning. We've heard from the Queen Consort. We also heard from Kathy, who sat here and told us about an NHS ward she worked on with children after the Manchester bomb and the intimacy with which the Queen engaged with those kids. So many tributes, so many stories, and so many people there, each with their own reason for being there.
It is. Every single person, every one of these hundreds of thousands of people who've queued every day has their own reason, their own story, their own connection, their own reason for being here. And it's wonderful. Let's hear some of those stories, shall we? Let's talk to we've got a family who've just turned up. Hello, come and have a chat with us. Hello. You're live on BBC Breakfast. Hi. Big smiles, but maybe some yawns as well, right?
We're ready. Good morning.
Good morning. Lovely to see your energy is good after a night on the street waiting.
Chocolate and cookies.
Is that the secret?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you come from? Where's
Norwich.
home? Norwich.
Yeah.
And how are you guys feeling?
Excited and tired.
Excited and tired. I think that sums it up for everybody, doesn't it? What's it like? Why did you want to come from Norwich to be part of this today? Let me talk to you on
I think it's just important to pay our respects. The Queen's been a massive part of our life, well, all of my life, and yeah, I just feel it's a special occasion. It's nice for her to be here, for us to be here to pay our respects to her.
There'll be loads of people watching this morning who think, I wonder what it's like to be in that queue. You tell them, give me some words to describe it. How would you describe the atmosphere?
I just think it's really nice that we should show how much she means to us and how grateful we are that we had her to reign over us.
Yeah. What's it been like with the people around us?
It's been lovely, hasn't it? It's been
nice
well
atmosphere.
looked after, yeah. It's been a lovely atmosphere.
Yeah.
And when your friends at school say to you, what's it been like? What will you say?
Well, I liked coming because we wanted to pay our respects to the Queen, but it was tiring because we had to walk all the way, but I think it was worth it.
What have you got in your shoes? You got your trainers on. Everybody's got trainers on, haven't they?
Comfy.
Have they been comfy enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if somebody's watching this morning and they're thinking, I might go down later, I might go and do the queue myself, what would your top tips be?
Well, you have to have patience, be patient, because there's loads of queues down there. So you just have to be patient.
What's the really important thing at school about grit and
determination?
Grit and determination for people in the queue. I guess that's what the Queen showed for all those years as well, and grit and determination. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us. What were your names again?
Isla
and
Lexi.
And Mums. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. You're almost there. Good morning to you. Can we have a quick chat with you? You're live on BBC Breakfast. We're talking and reflecting on the life of the Queen and why people have come.
We've been in the queue since about 9 p.m. last night, and it's just we have a connection to the royal family. We're originally from Turkey, and we don't have a royal family there, so we feel really connected to our royal family that we have here. So we've come to pay our respects.
The amazing duty she's that, and at least we could do is pay some respect. So it's been an amazing experience. Tiring, but good.
Tiring. What would you normally be doing on a Saturday night?
Well, it'll be a Sunday morning now, and I'll be hungover in bed. So this is healthy. I've done about 20,000 steps. So she's doing me another favour.
And you've got quite a few thousand more to go. I mean, you're almost there, but yeah, it's been
great, so can't wait to get in now.
Thank you for stopping to talk to us. Thank you very much indeed. Let me just talk to everybody will talk to us. Good morning. Hi, you're live on BBC Breakfast. Good morning to you. You've got some lovely medals on.
Yeah.
Tell us about your family connection, why you've both
come.
Okay,
so this is my son, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
I've served for 22 years in Merseyside Police. This is the Queen's Golden Jubilee medal. Platinum Jubilee medal. What's that one, Charlie?
I forgot.
That's the good
You've
conduct.
You've had 12 hours to get that right, Charlie.
Long service and good conduct. So I think for me, trying to serve the public in my role, there's no better example of that than the Queen doing that serving the public for 70 years in her role. It's a privileged role that I occupy, and it's a very privileged role that Her Majesty occupied. So we said last night we wanted to come. Charlie loves history, wanted to be a part of history, so here we are today.
What's it been like so far, Charlie?
Tiring.
Yeah, but it's going to be worth it, isn't it? It's something you'll be able to tell your children and grandchildren about in years to come.
Yeah.
And you're nearly there. Yeah. All right. Well, look, thank you for stopping and talking to us. Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
You're nearly there.
Let's go, Pam.
So this is the end of the queue. These people are almost inside Westminster Hall, but for people who are snaking all the way around the River Thames, sorry, I nearly hit somebody's face then, they're like 10 miles at the back in Southwark Park. Our correspondent Lauren Moss is there, and Lauren, this lovely autumnal Sunday morning, I guess a lot of people not working and thousands turning up to join this queue. It's going to get really busy.
They are, and it's already really, really busy. I've been here a couple of hours, and hundreds, possibly thousands of people are already heading into Southwark Park. I'm at the very, very start point of the queue. You can see the sign behind me warning from this point, 14 hours people have to walk and wait until they get to near where you are. And everyone is very eager to head in, but some people have paused before they set off to talk to me. Firstly, let's have a chat to Brian. You originally come from the United States, but you've lived here for 2 decades. Why was it important for you to come here?
I just felt great respect for the British monarchy, especially in modern times during the 20th century, and they're a beacon of freedom and democracy.
And you might not get in till midnight. Are you ready for the long?
I'm ready for the slog.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Let's nip over here. We've got Selina and your mother.
Hi.
You've actually all come from London. What I'm noticing is that we're seeing more people today that are coming not from too far away. Yesterday was people from all over the UK a bit more.
Right, yeah.
Why did you decide to leave it till Sunday to come?
Well, to be honest, I think it was the only day really feasible for me to come in, and we decided to start early. Really looking forward to be part of this momentous, moment in history and become part of history really by witnessing this, it's such a loss to the country. Growing up as a little child, all we knew was, the Queen, and, it's really hit. I think it's hit us all in different ways, but I really felt like her loss, and we'll really miss her. It's been fabulous.
And what about for you? What will it mean to you to be standing in Westminster Hall, possibly in the early hours of tomorrow morning?
Yeah, we'll be fine. I'm looking forward to because it's an honour to the Queen. Yeah, I really want to pay respect to the Queen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. You've been very kind hanging on for us. Let's nip round here and have a chat to both of you. What are your names and where have you come from today?
I'm Ione. I'm from Bromley.
And Amanda.
From Bromley, so not too far, just from South London. And tell me, really, why Sunday have you come? The sun is shining on you, but we've heard that the queue could close at some point today.
Well, it's my day off from work. And I remember the Queen when I was a little girl and she came to Jamaica. All of us look up to the Queen. And I just want to go and say thanks. This is the only day I've got. The Queen is the epitome of everything, of style, of tolerance, of greatness, of commitment. I have to go and say thank you.
What about for you, Amanda? What will it mean to you to get in there?
I just feel like it's probably possibly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Who knows, if anything like this will happen again, and I think it'll probably be the last female monarch, Queen in my lifetime, and just to experience it, I guess, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to me. I'll let you get inside. So as you can see, there's people coming from all over. Like I say, more people I've noticed from the London area today. I think people that I spoke to yesterday from Yorkshire and some from Florida and Belgium, they've come a bit earlier. So now everyone else is getting their last chance to come into Southwark Park, the very start of the queue. You might be able to make out behind me, there's some flowers laid there for the Queen, thanking Her Majesty for her service. I had a read of some of the cards earlier. But yeah, so this is the start. It's a long way to go to the end, 14 hours. At some point today, the queue will close because they want to make sure that everybody has got through to Westminster Hall to pay their respects before it officially closes at 6:30 tomorrow morning, for the Queen's funeral takes place at about 10:30 to 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll keep you updated throughout the day.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you very much indeed. Yes, full coverage on the BBC throughout the day, and we'll bring you any news as it comes into us from the government about what the plan is for the queue, because as Lauren's just saying, Westminster Hall will close to the public strictly at 6:30 tomorrow morning. So people who are thinking about heading to London need to know what the latest point might be for them to join, so that people aren't disappointed. Let me just talk you through what's likely to happen today then, because this is the fourth and the final day that the Queen's coffin will be in Westminster Hall, where people can pay their respects as she lies in state. This evening there will be a 1-minute silence across the UK. That will be at 8 o'clock tonight, and people will be able to mark that silence either privately in their own homes, but we've also heard on breakfast this morning from people who are getting together with neighbours or at work, having community events and vigils. Meanwhile, the King's official duties continue. He mourns privately, grieves privately, but he's also holding an audience with the Prime Minister Liz Truss at Buckingham Palace today to talk through the final details for the funeral tomorrow. And the King and Queen Consort are also hosting heads of state and official overseas guests who've been arriving in their thousands in London over the last few hours, including President Joe Biden and his wife Jill, the First Lady of the United States. They turned up and flew into Stansted last night, and they will be meeting King Charles today, among others. So our new King has a packed day ahead of him, even before he gets to the funeral itself tomorrow. But as well as hearing from people in the queue here in central London, here on Breakfast we wanted to get around the UK and hear your stories from communities everywhere. And our correspondents Coletta Smith and David Wallace-Lockhart jumped in a car, and they've been driving from place to place just to hear about how you are marking this moment in our history.
So buckle down and we'll head off on our grand tour.
Jade, hi. Travelling across the north of England yesterday, the only queue we encountered was at the bar.
Yeah, of course you can. But people are marking this weekend in weird and wonderful ways.
Football match on Saturday.
So you run the park run here in Saltaire?
I do. We met runners and worship leaders.
This is the Grand Hall at Victoria Mill.
We heard about plans for food banks, festivals and football matches.
There's some view.
This morning, I'm behind the wheel as we leave Lancashire and head south.
First stop, Cheshire. Go. And it's Ellesmere Port. I'm meeting the delightful Andrew and his family.
Hey! I'll show you.
He's made and sent so many cards to the Queen over the last few years that they practically became pen pals.
This one's like a letter.
The Queen was glad to learn that you like to help others and to know that you and your brother and sister, Aaron and Amelia, have raised money, bless you, to support children's charities.
I write, Happy Christmas, or how much we raised, or when it's her birthday, or when Prince Philip died.
You wrote a card and sent it?
Yeah, or her 70 years on the throne.
That's a really lovely idea.
Yeah.
Who's next then? Who are you writing to next?
Good luck for Prince Charles for being king.
Yeah.
And I'll do a Happy Christmas one to Prince William.
On Monday, which is going to be the Queen's funeral. Do you think you'll be watching that, or what are your plans as a family?
We're hopefully going to watch Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and 5.
That is a great idea.
Down at the waterfront, I want to find out what people have planned for the funeral tomorrow.
It's videos, and it's if you pop down, it's there.
It's not long before I bump into YouTuber Xander and his dad. How's Xander planning to spend his bank holiday?
Probably doing stuff on YouTube, to be honest. Maybe occasionally popping downstairs to have a looking at the TV, but yeah, pretty much just YouTube.
Do you have a television?
Turns out we're not the only ones travelling around at the moment. Loris has come over from New Zealand for a canal barge holiday.
I think it's a very important moment in history, isn't it? It's possibly not something that we'll experience again in our lifetime.
And you'll potentially find somewhere for the funeral tomorrow, is that right?
That's what our hope is, yes. We're hoping to be back in Chester where we can get a good signal and watch it on television.
The Kiwi flag is at half-mast for the Queen.
As we get back on the road, this time heading for Wales.
So it's us officially entering Conway, yeah.
I've got the best deal this afternoon. A proper day out at the seaside. And here in Llandudno, the pier is packed. But it'll be a different scene tomorrow as the whole thing will be closed off.
Bank holiday is usually the busiest throughout the year for us, but we just thought we made the decision before it'd be right in the eyes of the public as well. Also, all our staff, all our team, they want to spend the day remembering.
You've never had any royals?
No, not yet, not yet.
On this particular wheel?
Not yet, no.
But
well, hopefully, hopefully soon. Hopefully they'll come down.
So you run the pier here, but you're not a fan of heights?
I'm not, no. It's the second time I've been on it. My colleague who runs the wheel, he does on purpose, stops it right at the top for us. He knows full well I'm scared of heights.
I'm dropping in on Alicia.
Alicia, hi. I'm David. Nice to meet you.
She's an artist who posts her work on TikTok. Her recent painting of the Queen has around 2.5 million views.
I spent ages and many hours looking at her face and trying to work out her features and everything. So yeah, I was really upset. So I sort of felt like I knew her.
Sometimes being far away doesn't mean you can't feel close to someone.
Everywhere we've been on this road trip has felt very far from London, and it's felt very far from those official events. But still so many people wanting to mark this weekend somehow.
And we've ended up in a land that's built around the holiday industry, but this bank holiday weekend looks like no other.
Yeah. Should we start thinking about heading back?
I'm not going anywhere until I finish this ice cream and devour the flake.
That's a good point.
David and Coletta have got the right idea there. I've just been told by somebody in the queue that there are lots of ice cream vans along the route as well, providing a bit of sustenance as well as coffee, importantly, for the people who've been waiting for hour upon hour through the night. 12, 13 hours these people have waited, but they are almost at Westminster Hall now for the lying in state. One person who is going to be in the Abbey tomorrow for the funeral is Nancy O'Neill, who's from Bradford and joins us now on Breakfast. Good morning to you, Nancy. You've got all of this ahead of you, but hopefully when you get to London you won't have to queue. Just tell us about your own connection and how you came to be invited to the funeral.
Yes, thank you and good morning. On Saturday afternoon last week, I was in a car showroom buying a new car and my phone rang. No caller ID, so I ummed and ahed about whether to answer it, but I did answer it because there was very little else going on at the time. And a man said he was ringing from the Cabinet Office. And I'd been awarded an MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours this year. And because of that, and we hadn't yet received those awards, he asked, would I be interested in attending the Queen's funeral? When I'd got over the shock and said things like, wow, that's amazing, I said, yes, of course I'd be interested in attending. And he said, well, somebody will be in touch shortly and we'll go from there.
Just imagine if you hadn't picked up that call. That's a lesson for everybody, isn't it? Answer the phone.
Yeah, and that's what I thought, because often when you get those, the people trying to sell you insurance or you've been in an accident or something like that. So I don't always answer them. But yeah, absolutely, because I assume that they've just moved on to the next person.
What an honour to be there tomorrow for this moment, to be able to say goodbye and to represent your family, your friends and your colleagues, because you've worked for the NHS as well, haven't you, for a long time?
Yes, I started my nurse training in the NHS in 1980, September 1980, so almost 42 years ago now. And I've worked in the NHS in various different roles for all of that time. So I do see it very much as a representative role. I am representing myself, my family, but also all of my colleagues, and not just the ones working in the NHS in Bradford District and Craven, where I work, but also my social care colleagues. Particularly in the last couple of years, they've all worked incredibly hard together to get through the COVID pandemic. So I see it as as something for them, not just for me. But yeah, an absolute honour, incredibly proud, and what a privilege. You know, I listen to those people that have been queuing to go and see the Queen's coffin now, and I think, well, I would have done that. You know, I considered going, taking my grandchildren, but now, will there be queues? I suspect it'll be a little bit challenging for me getting around London tomorrow, just like it is everybody else, but I'm going to try and soak in some of the atmosphere and enjoy the whole day.
So you'll be there inside the Abbey, but you want to spend some time on the streets around as well, just experiencing this. How are you going to get here from Bradford? What's your plan? Because we're being warned to expect an awful lot of people using the UK's transport links tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm going down on the train this afternoon. So I'm hoping to get down, not as easy a journey as I would have normally expected, because for some reason the direct train from Leeds doesn't seem to be running today. So, or at least if they are, not one that I could get my ticket booked on. It was a challenge getting a hotel accommodation for tonight as well, but I've managed to do that. And then I think there'll be a lot of walking involved. Which is not too bad today because I'll have my walking shoes on. But tomorrow I've got my heels out for the first time in a few years. And I suspect I'll be walking to the Abbey, and I think I'll have about a mile to walk tomorrow. But then I look at, as you've just shown, some of those people that have been queuing for 12, 14 hours and walking for practically all of that time. I can't complain, can I? I'll be getting, yes, I will go in the Abbey. I'm not entirely certain about what the seating arrangements are. I suspect I'll be towards the back, if not right at the back of the Abbey. But still, it'll be amazing to be there, to be a part of a historic event, one of the biggest events to take place in the country in the last 100 years, probably.
Absolutely. It will be an amazing thing to be part of and a privilege for you. Nancy, thank you so much. Yeah, I suggest when you get here tomorrow, don't say in too loud a voice that you've had to walk for a mile and complain about it, because these people have walked for like 10, 12 miles through the night and they might not be too impressed. But yes, we wish you all the best. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and we hope tomorrow goes okay for you and your journey here. Thank you very much indeed, Nancy O'Neill. We'll talk to some more of the people here in the queue a little bit later. As the sun comes up here, it's a beautiful autumn morning in London. But what's it going to be like for the rest of the day and tonight for those people who make the final journey here to London for the Lying in State, which finishes at 6:30 tomorrow morning? Chris can give us the UK weather. Morning, Chris.
Hello again. For most of you, the day ahead is looking dry, but there is more cloud around than we've had for the last few days. The best of the sunshine likely across parts of Wales and southwest England, whereas for Scotland and eastern areas of England, we've got much thicker cloud moving in, and indeed, underneath this area of cloud, we've got a couple of weak weather fronts diving southwards around the North Sea. That will just increase the thickness of the cloud to bring a few passing showers, and we've picked up some of those showers already this morning, affecting northern Scotland. One or two running through the North Channel. You could see one of those across the Isle of Man into parts of northwest England around Greater Manchester and Merseyside. And we have some showers also running down the North Sea, affecting eastern areas of Scotland and eastern coastal counties of England. Now, through the day, the best of the sunshine for southern Wales and southwest England, although it will brighten up for northern Scotland later on as well. We could see a few showers working into East Anglia and southeast England, but they'll be light and fleeting, and for many of you, probably squeezing between any showers. Temperatures today for most ranging between 15 and 17 degrees Celsius. Now, today's the last day of the Queen's Lying in State, and we're looking at another dry day in London. There's just a small chance of a shower as we head towards the evening time. And for tomorrow, for the state funeral, again, the weather is looking dry. Overnight tonight, we'll continue to see a few showers for a time working in across northwest England, perhaps a few moving to North Wales, and an increasing number of showers into the Hebrides. But otherwise, it's a dry night with some clear spells. Where we see the clearest of the weather overnight, temperatures dip down into single figures, but otherwise, temperatures about 10 to 12 degrees. Now, tomorrow we see thicker cloud working into the northwest of the country, and actually there's a weak weather front here that will be bringing a few spots of light rain. Nothing significant, mind you, accumulating through the day. A few breaks in the cloud, eastern Scotland, and again there could be a few towards Wales and the southwest of England. That's where we'll see some of the highest temperatures, up to 19 degrees. And then deeper into the new week, we've still got high pressure influencing the weather in the south, but these weather fronts start to become much more active by the time we get to Thursday, bringing a spell of rain southwards and eastwards across the country. So weather-wise, on Tuesday, another weak weather front coming into the northwest of the country, bringing again the threat of a few spots of rain. Otherwise, it's largely dry, quite a bit of cloud, but some bright or sunny spells coming through. This weather front actually will be bringing some slightly milder air with it, so temperatures could reach around 18 to 20 across England and Wales, 18 there for Belfast and 17 for Glasgow. It is fairly quiet weather-wise until we get to Thursday, when that weather front brings more active zone of rain across the country with strengthening winds for a time across the northwest. That's how the weather's looking.
I think we've found the person in the queue with the most medals, certainly this morning. This is Naren. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Talk us through these medals. They are splendid.
Yes, this one is Iraq, Afghanistan, Jubilee Medal. This is Officer's Medal. This is Territorial Decoration. Next one is Long Service Good Conduct Medal, and another Jubilee Medal,
And
Silver Jubilee Medal.
Every single one of them with the face of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
That tells the story of why you so wanted to be here and
Yes.
queue through the night. Just talk us through when you made that decision to come and why.
Well, I made that decision on Friday and said to my wife, Michelle, that I'm going to pay respect to Her Majesty. And on yesterday evening, just joined the queue, and here I am.
How's it been? Because you've been here all night long, long night, cold night.
Yes, but we met friends as well, and Steph, she came from Switzerland, and with her niece and other colleagues as well. Just.
I'm worried you're not going to lose your new friends at this point for talking to me, are you?
No, we will meet again.
Oh, you'll meet again.
Yes.
As the Queen once said, didn't she, during COVID? That was her message to all of us. We'll meet again. I think you need another medal today for being in the queue. They should be giving them out.
Well, that is good enough.
You've got your wristband, I suppose, haven't you?
I have.
Show us your wristband.
It just fallen off.
I hope you've not lost it, because you're going to get to the front of the... Oh, OK, good man, good man. Relieved to see it. Make sure you don't lose that, because you really want to go inside. Thank you very much indeed, Naren. Lovely to meet you. These people who've come from... Bye-bye. Well, he'll probably be lapping round in a moment to speak to us. Good morning to you. Hello, just from the BBC. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Can I just ask you, how are you doing? You're on BBC Breakfast. How are you?
I'm knackered. I got here at about 9 o'clock, and it's hard work.
So 9 o'clock PM last night,
9
so
PM
12 hours.
Well, I normally work 12-hour shifts.
What do you do?
I work for the Met Police in one of the control rooms. But it's nothing like this. You're sitting down for 12 hours. This is just continuous walking.
So you're exhausted this morning, but
Knackered,
just tell
but
us
the
why
end
you
result-
wanted to be here for the Queen.
I came for her mother 20 years ago, and I saw as a youngster the coffin with Princess Diana on the mole. And I thought, I need to come down here, pay my respects, 70 years on the throne, impeccable service, plus my 91-year-old mother's at home.
So you're doing it for her as
I thought
well.
I'd represent her.
Hopefully she's watching right now and she'll see what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us. So many people here talking to us this morning. That's it from now. But BBC Breakfast will be on air from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning ahead of the state funeral, bringing you all the information you need to know and sharing your stories. That's it from us for this morning, though. Hope you have a good day.